Good morning, it is 7 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilfred, very good morning from me as well. Lots to get to, including some breaking news.
In the last few moments, President Trump has taken aim at the United Kingdom, calling plans to cede the Chagos Islands sovereignty to Mauritius an act of great stupidity.
The government's considering introducing a social media ban for under-16s.
Accusations of a north-south divide as frustrations over illegal waste dumps reach boiling point.
Also today, a new call for women to share their maternity experiences to help make change. We'll have all the details.
And a family feud out in the open. Brooklyn Peltz Beckham breaks his silence on the alleged rift with his parents.
A very good morning to you. Welcome to the programme. We start with breaking news. In just the last few moments, President Trump has launched an attack on the UK over the decision to hand the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. In a post just moments ago on Truth Social, the president called the decision an act of great stupidity.
Now, we should just pause and take a look at the whole statement, because this is pretty astonishing stuff, I have to say. He says, shockingly, our brilliant, in quotes, NATO ally, the United Kingdom, is currently planning to give away the island of Diego Garcia, the site of a vital US military base, to Mauritius, and to do so in capitals for no reason whatsoever. There's no doubt that China and Russia have noticed this act of total weakness.
These are international powers who only recognise strength, which is why the United States of America, under my leadership, is now, after only 1 year, respected like never before. The UK giving away extremely important land is an act of great stupidity, capitalised, and is another in a very long line of national security reasons why Greenland has to be acquired.
He goes on to say, Denmark and its European allies have to do the right thing. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And then he signs it off, President Donald J. Trump.
Well, let's bring in Mark Stone, who's able to join us on this. Mark, thanks so much for joining us at 2 a.m. there. I mean, this was as pointed as you could get from the US president to the UK, 24 hours or 20 hours after Keir Starmer ultimately tried to strike a conciliatory tone.
Yeah, and many months after the British thought that this issue was done and dusted. I mean, Diego Garcia is part of the Chagos Islands, and mid-year last year, the United Kingdom made a controversial decision, but a decision nonetheless, to hand sovereignty of the Chagos Islands back to Mauritius, and that, of course, included Diego Garcia. Now, the reason that the president the reason that America in general over the past year has been exercised about this is because Diego Garcia is a very important, strategically important military base for the United States, as it is for the United Kingdom. But as part of the deal to hand sovereignty back to Mauritius, a 99-year lease was put in place for Diego Garcia precisely so that the Americans and the British would be able still to operate there and effectively to run it for themselves. So that's the first point. But the second point is all this was done and dusted. And mid-year last year, I think it was May last year, it was something the Americans were really worried, the Brits were really worried about. Would the Americans have a problem with the whole issue of Diego Garcia and the Chagos? And mid-year last year, Trump was president, there was no problem. And yet suddenly, and look, the way you read that, and I'm only just reading it now as we speak as well, the sort of vibe and the tone of Trump's statement, which was, 15 minutes ago he released this, almost is as if he's only just discovered that this is happening. It's extraordinary. But look, Sophie, Wilf, the broader point is that, you know, I was saying a day ago that it feels as though the wheels are truly coming off the transatlantic alliance, whether that be with the UK or with the European Union. But you know, for the UK, the special relationship, I mean, it's in a really bad way right now. And remember that Keir Starmer, you know, he's worked so hard and has had some success, no question, trying to be the Trump whisperer, trying to be the guy who is able to be almost the bridge from Europe to America under Trump, to try and work out what on earth is going on. Right now, that feels like a very tricky place that Keir Starmer is in.
Mark, as to the timing of this, as you said, with particularly the fact that Chagos was sort of done and dusted ages ago, he's linked it to Greenland in his post. He's about to go to Davos, where he'll meet European leaders, interestingly not Keir Starmer. We know he's a big negotiator, and laying the groundwork for what he might say there. But it's pretty clear in recent days he is not backing down on Greenland.
He's not. I mean, I was in the studio with you. It was exactly a week ago, I think, just over a week ago, and you asked me that same question: is he serious? And I said yes, he is. Look, he is absolutely serious about his desire to own Greenland, for Greenland to be part of America, and that's the tricky thing. Look, I was talking to Danish diplomats here in Washington late last week, and while they were somewhat encouraged by the meeting that they had with J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio, in that things didn't spiral further. It was still clear to them, and actually, it's worth pointing out that J.D. Vance was the person in the meeting with the Danish Foreign Minister last week who talked about or raised the idea of finding some common ground. So that was encouraging from the Danes. But what they also recognised from that meeting is that Trump has a particular position, and that is to own Greenland. So they agreed to disagree, but at that point last week, they expected that maybe there would be room for negotiation and some middle ground could be found. I think those underneath Trump, some underneath Trump, maybe not Marco Rubio, maybe not J.D. Vance, but some underneath Trump do believe that this Greenland thing is a distraction, that it should go away, and then maybe it will go back into the long grass. But, from everything that Donald Trump himself has said over the past 48, 72 hours, it seems absolutely clear this is the thing he really, really wants at the moment, trying to find some compromise, trying to find some off-ramp to allow Donald Trump to feel like he's won, that he's got something. I think is going to be really, really important in Davos at those meetings. And the Danes have been so clear, and the Europeans more broadly, you could basically do what you want in Greenland, Mr. Trump, is what they're saying. You can build more military bases. You can call them Fort Trump. You can build Trump Towers in Greenland. You could do what you want, except you can't have Greenland for yourself, because it is a people, it is a culture, it is a country, and you can't just take another country. That's their view. And of course, more broadly, what they would say is that peace through strength is all very well, but strength together. The whole point of NATO, so argues Europe, is to collectively protect against any aggression from anywhere else. And Trump, of course, seems to think he can do it on his own.
Mark, thank you very much indeed for that analysis. Mark Stone there from Washington. Well, let's go straight in and get some government reaction to this. The Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, Darren Jones, joins us now. Great to have you on the programme. I mean, this literally happened, I should say, like 5 minutes before you kind of walked into the studio, so we appreciate the fast pace of this, yes, is one way of putting it. It's an extraordinary post by Donald Trump. Are United Kingdom currently planning to give away the island of Diego Garcia, the site of a vital US military base, to Mauritius for no reason whatsoever? He says it's an act of total weakness, it's an act of great stupidity. What's your reaction?
Look, we've gone around this quite a lot already. We've secured the islands there as a military base for the next 100 years. We're just about finishing off the legislative process in Parliament to enable that to happen. And I think, as your colleague alluded to, this was a deal that was welcomed at the time by the American administration, but also by European allies and others, given its strategic significance in the world. We were in a tricky spot in that the island was previously part of the British Empire. There were legal challenges to the island and those types of things. And so we needed to find a modern application to protect its military capabilities, which we all rely on, which is what we've done.
So no way this changes the Chagos deal?
We've done a deal with the Mauritian government. We've legislated for the process. We've agreed the terms of the treaty which has been signed.
So it's done.
This is the way in which to secure that military base for the next 100 years.
I mean, Donald Trump's linking it to Greenland. He says it's another in a very long line of national security reasons why Greenland has to be acquired. I mean, if it was him saying, look, if you cancel the Chagos deal, I'll back off from Greenland, is that something this government would ever consider?
I can't give a running commentary on hypotheticals. We have to deal with the situations as they unfold. But the thing that we and the Americans agree on is that security in the north and around the Arctic is increasingly important as those ice caps melt back and Russia militarization on its borders and China being able to come over the top in the way it hasn't done in the past. And so the debate that we're having is what can we do as NATO to strengthen our military capabilities in the north? And that's the type of conversation we're having with the Americans.
I mean, it's a very kind of... You're answering in a very diplomatic way, which I guess reflects what Keir Starmer was doing yesterday. He said he wanted calm discussions between allies on Greenland. Mm-hmm. You have to ask... I mean, how are those calm discussions going when Donald Trump is talking about, the UK committing an act of great stupidity and that China and Russia have noticed as acts of total weakness?
All I'd say is...
It's not going well, is it? I mean...
Well, I mean, look at the successes. And I say that seriously because in the past, I mean, Keir Starmer's been criticised for not tweeting or shouting or kind of banging the table and calling the president names, as other world leaders have. Actually, the approach that he and the government have taken, serious British diplomatic skill, has resulted in the UK being better off than any other country in the world in the face of changes to the American
Just to come in, because that is absolutely not what I'm saying here, right? What I'm saying here is Keir Starmer made a deliberate decision yesterday to not impose retaliatory tariffs, to not cancel the King's visit. These are actual things that he's chosen to do, a path that he's chosen to take in. And as a result, Donald Trump has called you out, basically, saying it's an act of great stupidity, of total weakness. I mean, you have to ask, if Vladimir Putin was talking the same way as Donald Trump about going in and acquiring a land by military force if necessary, we wouldn't be talking about calm discussions, would we?
Well, the difference is that the United States is an ally. Our economy and our military and security capabilities are intertwined. We have to protect British interests.
Is it still an ally? I mean, look at what he's saying
here. Absolutely.
This is the new world. It feels like sometimes you're playing the old way.
No, look, so there's a political dialogue here. But look, I'm responsible with the Prime Minister for coordinating national security across government, and I can tell you that every single day with the Americans and our other Five Eyes partners around the world, that military and security cooperation continues and is really, really important to British security and our global interests. So we have to deal with the political challenges in the debate, of course. We still think that proper British diplomacy is the way to deal with that. We're very good at that, actually, as a country. That's paid off in the past, and that's how we're going to keep playing it in the future.
Why isn't the PM in Davos?
The Prime Minister's always got lots of challenges on his time. The Chancellor is in Davos, the Business Secretary is in Davos. Davos is predominantly a place to talk about the economy and business investment.
Donald Trump's there, isn't it? I mean...
Sure, and
probably other things
and the Prime Minister has been a number of times before, but, the Prime Minister's always got lots of things to trade off in his diary, but some of our most senior cabinet colleagues are in Davos, which I think is fine.
It's another interview where it's just, dominated by world affairs. It's hard to escape, let's be completely honest. But there is some very important government announcements that I do want to talk about as well domestically, particularly this consultation on banning social media for under-16s. I was just going to ask, not your... If you take off your kind of Darren Jones representative of the government line to take hat and put on your kind of Darren Jones father hat, what's your own view on banning social media?
I think all parents worry about some of the impacts of social media and technology on their kids. I mean, that's, I think, pretty well understood. My kids are too little at the moment, but I intend to keep them away from it for as long as possible, quite frankly. And so it's right that we have a conversation with parents and young people and also the tech companies and others to try to understand the impacts on children's well-being. Now, we've already got powers in the Online Safety Act. There's already things that are in place, but there's clearly, I think, what are called addictive features built into some of these apps that keep bringing kids back and back and back.
Do you think Keir Starmer's kind of moved on this a bit? Has he kind of been kind of prized away from the tech bros by his own MPs?
No, I don't think there's a political play in here. I mean, there was a debate previously about basically blocking young people from accessing a load of stuff on their phones. The Prime Minister's talked to Anthony Albanese in Australia about that, where they've had the ban. The Prime Minister worried that if you did that, you might block off the access that young people have to news content on social media apps and those types of things where they need to understand what's going on in the world. But he's never questioned the fact that we should do everything we can to protect young people's well-being, and essentially that's what this national conversation is going to be about.
Just finally as well, there's been reports this week you think Wes Streeting should be sacked for disloyalty. Times quoting one source: "These briefings are carefully calculated to damage Wes and the Prime Minister in order to advance his, as in your, own leadership ambitions."
It's total nonsense. Look, someone tried this story a couple of weeks ago when someone thought it was a good idea to brief against Wes in the first place, and it didn't land, and they've had a second go, and it must have been a slow news day. Wes Streeting knows that it's got nothing to do with me, as do all of my colleagues, and whoever is spending their time kind of briefing out these stories, they should either get on with the job or get out.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Darren Jones, speaking to us there. Darren Jones talking there, reacting, of course, to that extraordinary statement on Truth Social by Donald Trump.
Well, you mentioned Davos, of course, where the Prime Minister isn't, but other members of the UK government are, including Rachel Reeves and Peter Carr, the Chancellor and Business Secretary, along with other primary world leaders like Mark Carney, like Ursula von der Leyen, and, of course, Donald Trump coming tomorrow.
Paul Kelso is there. Paul, it's going to be an extraordinary summit, isn't it? Particularly, of course, given just the latest post by Donald Trump.
Yeah, indeed. Davos, the annual meeting of the World Economic Forum, can be a bit of a talking shop as a bit of excuse for deal-making that goes on behind the scenes. Not this year. There's some very hard geopolitics that has risen to the very top of the agenda at the deliberate instigation of Donald Trump, one has to think. His threats to impose tariffs on Greenland's northern European allies, including the UK, has upended whatever people thought they and he were coming here to talk about. And just this morning, in a little fusillade of posts on his Truth Social platform, one must think time to coincide with the European leaders waking up on this side of the Atlantic. He has upped the stakes again. He has posted some screenshots, remarkable really thing to do for a leader to do, some screenshots of messages he says, and has been confirmed by the Élysée Palace, are from Emmanuel Macron, in which Macron said to him, "I don't understand what you're doing in Greenland." And Macron appears to suggest convening a G7 meeting here in Davos, which Ukraine, Denmark, Syria and Russia might also be invited. So the tone and the pace is being set from the White House. What is on the formal agenda here today is some of those very key figures in the European and the global response to this, an opportunity to set out their thoughts. Mid-morning here, Ursula von der Leyen, the EU president, will speak. Emmanuel Macron himself is on stage at 2 o'clock. In between, we hear from the Chinese vice premier, one of the few people perhaps who's enjoying the sight of these transatlantic allies at their throat. But this is all in flux, and there will be opportunities. The one thing you can say for Davos, it does give opportunities for private discussion and negotiation, and all the key parties will be here over the next 48 hours.
Well, Paul, apart from Keir Starmer, of course, as we were just reflecting, thank you so much for that, Paul Kelso, there in a chilly Davos. And to that very point, Sophie, I just want to bring you a tweet from someone who is going to Davos, Nigel Farage. He's just tweeted, "Thank goodness Trump has vetoed the surrender of the Chagos Islands." Of course, the very clear implication from Nigel Farage is saying that the government now has to change tact on this process. As we said, Keir Starmer's not going to Davos. Donald Trump is. Nigel Farage is. There is an opportunity there for Farage to show that he's the true Trump whisperer. Who knows precisely on what details, but the really interesting kind of potential over the next 48 hours.
Yeah, exactly, particularly, of course, when you bear in mind what Darren Jones has just told us as well. Firstly, on Davos, saying, look, there is always lots of demands on the Prime Minister's diary, but also on the Chagos deal. It's effectively saying it's done. Yeah,
we'll keep an eye on that for sure. Now, the government is considering adopting an Australia-style ban on social media for children under the age of 16. Yeah, so they've been discussing this for a long time. They said they want to have a look at what's going on in Australia, etc., etc. But now something's changed because they say that they're launching a consultation to try and better protect children online, which includes curbing addictive app features like this kind of infinite scrolling that people talk about. Yeah, our education reporter, Anjum Pirbakos, is here. Anjum, good morning to you.
Morning.
Great to see you. So they're now considering this?
So I think the idea is now that the Department for Education and the government are looking at a consultation process. So they're calling for evidence and input from young people, organisations, the education sector. And I know that lots of people have received this news very positively. I know the teaching unions have really kind of gratefully accepted that there is going to be a consultation process. I'm sure they'll be very much involved. But there are some people that are saying this is just delaying the process of bringing in a ban, which we need to do as urgently as possible. And campaigners, and I know particularly parent campaigners, who have taken this issue sort of really to heart because they've been affected by them. And they're saying that actually this isn't going far enough, quickly enough. So the consultation process is sort of positively received. But there are lots of moving parts to this as well, because on one hand, you've got the Department of Education saying we're going to do this consultation, but they're saying that actually there's no place for phones in schools. And we know currently 90% of secondary schools have a full no phone policy. We know 99% of primary schools have a complete banning of the phone policy. So it's about the interaction that young people have with social media off school. You know, social media is a platform or platforms where 24/7 children can be like that infinite scrolling or doom scrolling, or we hear this phrase bed rotting, where children or young people are kind of using their devices to spend vast amounts of time engaging in things that happen online. And schools are often dealing with the fallout from personal experience, having been in, you know, on the front line in schools. Often things will happen at home, off school site, but you're dealing with the fallout of what children are posting, what children are saying to each other, the kind of bullying that takes place, and you're dealing with that back in school. So it's a really big issue with lots of moving parts that we really need to keep a close eye on.
Yes, I always think I'm so glad that I went to school at a time when you kind of finished a school day, and if you'd had a bad day and someone said something awful, that was kind of it. You had a bit of a break from it, rather than if you have got a phone, then it kind of continues often late into the night as well. I'm always so struck, Anjum, by the polling on this too, because people are really in favour of it. I think it's over 70% that they want a ban.
No, absolutely. And I think that there's a whole thing about this generation who have grown up with the internet, with social media, and how their lives are so different from the previous generation. And often you think that if they're spending that much time online, and there's vast hours, you know, we're talking about hours and hours of the day where young people are online, what could they be doing? What should they be doing? You know, is it healthy for them to spend that much time online, engaging with platforms in that way? So I think there's a whole discussion that's going to be had. We know that there's been an amendment that's been tabled that's going to be discussed in House of Lords tomorrow with regards to the Children Wellbeing and Schools Bill, where they're asking for this ban to be brought in for young people not to have access to social media apps, in particular things like TikTok, Snapchat, etc., Instagram, where that doom scrolling or infinite scrolling takes place. And there's a real kind of push for it, because I think that there's a call from parents, but also campaigners and the education sector will say, well, this is a real distraction for young people and we want to kind of move away from that.
And great stuff. Thanks so much.
Now, I should say that we normally have quite a high bar for celebrity stories on this programme, but that bar has been met today with this extraordinary, I guess, jaw-dropping statement that Brooklyn Pounce Beckham has posted on Instagram. It's a kind of 6-page long statement, 16.1 million followers on Instagram, where he's basically said that he's cut all ties with his family and there's no chance of a reconciliation anytime soon. Yeah, and this has been bubbling on for a while, obviously, this story, and they've been communicating through lawyers and kind of just about keeping it under the surface. That's all ceased to be the case this time around. It's all, to me, very tragic and petty. I mean, what are we really talking about here? Someone saying, you put the brand first, and the other one saying, so what? I mean, kind of get over it. It's my view. I love it. Wilf's got, sort of tiny
on both sides. On both sides, yeah, exactly. You know, speaking up against the terrible upbringing I've had, you know.
It's quite interesting because there is some data showing that this is happening more often as well, right? There are more people becoming estranged from their parents or going no contact, I think is the term now. There was a survey finding 27% of Americans estranged from a relative, which actually shocked me, I have to say. Yeah. Again, I mean, listen, I said this on Cheat Sheet in more detail. As someone that's lost a father and lost a brother, when I see these stories, I'm just sort of... It's not my family, and each their own, but I kind of get a little bit angry. I just sort of think, you know, you won't have time to reconcile this someday in the future. I think about it in a similar way with, we've been talking about this because he's in England, obviously, but with Harry, William and Charles, different story, different details, but, you know, a lot of time has passed. Just somehow find a way to reconcile this, sort it out, you know. You'll regret it one day.
you will regret it one day. And yeah, that's kind of my view.
I think it's very, very hard to disagree with that, Wilfred, to be completely honest. I think it's very hard to disagree with that.
Still to come, we're going to be talking to Baroness Amos about a new call for women to share their maternity experiences.
There's a fresh look to your news from 10 on Sky News.
It's a new show called The Wrap, every night of the week.
We'll still bring you the day's biggest stories.
But with more lively debate.
More in-depth commentary.
And more of what you need to know.
Plus a look at what's making tomorrow's headlines.
The Wrap.
Everything wrapped up for you from 10 on Sky News.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Welcome back. We want to take you to Russia now, where the Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, will be giving his annual news conference to journalists in the next hour. Our Moscow correspondent, Ivor Bennett, will be there for us. Ivor, is this as long-winded as President Putin's annual conference? What can we expect from it?
Well, it's certainly going to be long-winded. Last year it was just over 3 hours, but I don't think it'll be as long as Vladimir Putin's, which was 4.5 hours. But still, lots for him to get into, because, as you say, it sets out Russia's foreign policy agenda for the year ahead. And what a year it's already been on that front. We've had the toppling of Maduro in Venezuela, the protests and threat of US action in Iran, and then, of course, the tensions over Greenland. 3 issues which are of direct concern for Russia, because Venezuela and Iran, of course, are key allies of Moscow, and the Arctic and Greenland is an area of major economic and strategic value to Russia. So you would think that Russia would be falling over itself to condemn what's been happening, criticise Donald Trump's rhetoric at least, calling for restraint. But no, they've remained strangely silent on all 3 topics. Vladimir Putin, for example, hasn't spoken publicly on any of them still. And the reason for this is, like everyone else, Russia has to tread carefully when it comes to Donald Trump. They have to keep him on side, and they want to keep him on side when it comes to negotiations over Ukraine. That is of a higher priority for the Kremlin. So instead of criticising him, they are kind of skirting around these issues. And on Greenland, actually, it seems to be actively encouraging Trump. Yesterday, the Kremlin said he would go down in history if he did manage to acquire it as US territory. And that's because all these transatlantic tensions are playing into Moscow's hands. I think Moscow is probably hoping that they may actually impact negotiations over Ukraine. If the NATO alliance falls out over Greenland, will Trump still want to provide security guarantees for Ukraine, for example? So all of this is quite a fascinating diplomatic dance that Russia is kind of performing right now, and I'm sure we'll see it and hear it articulated a lot further later this morning from Sergei Lavrov, Russia's veteran foreign minister, when this press conference gets underway in a short while.
Ivor, great stuff. Thanks so much for being there for us, and thank you for summarising later in the day the 3 hours we can expect.
Yeah, exactly.
And just pulling what's relevant from it, Ivor there for us in Moscow.
Now, let's talk water, because water companies are going to be forced to carry out what's been called MOT-style checks on pipes and also inspections without notice. It's all part of the government's attempt to try and overhaul the water industry.
There's been intense pressure to do something after several outages, including in the southeast last week, where thousands of people were left without water. Sadia's here to break it all down for us. Sadia, what's the latest?
So the idea of all of this is to prevent failures like what we saw in Kent. So that, of course, happened, we were told, because of freezing pipes, freezing temperatures, making those pipes become frozen, and therefore thousands of people were left without water. And so these plans outlined in a government white paper today called the Water White Paper is all set about that. Currently, there are 4 organisations that regulate the way water companies work. So there's Ofwat, which regulates and oversees how much water companies can charge customers for particular services. Then there's the Drinking Water Inspectorate to make sure that drinking water is safe. And then there are 2, the Environment Agency and Natural England, which monitor water firms' impact on the environment. And the idea is to roll all of those together into one regulatory body. And there are lots of intricate details that have been outlined so far, including, rather than having a one-size-fits-all approach, to have individual teams for these water companies dedicated to them so that they can set their own water targets for those particular water companies. And those no-notice inspections that you mentioned, and infrastructure MOTs, so that they can identify any problems with pipes and pumps and sewage systems and so on before they fail. They'll also appoint a chief engineer to sit inside the new water regulator to give it a more hands-on approach. This is all sounding very complicated. It's not going to happen quickly. It's not going to be this year. We're told it may take a year to put it all into place, but the government is calling this a once-in-a-generation reform.
I mean, it needs to happen, doesn't it? I mean, I have to say, like, some of the stories that we've been hearing, like in the southeast, but it's not the only part of the country, of course, who's been impacted by these kind of outages, really quite shocking.
It is, yeah. And I think when you look at the impact it had on those schools and businesses in those areas and the homes, people having to go out and queue for long hours to try and just get some safe drinking water. At one point, there was a notice on to boil your water before you drink it. When all of those things are happening, and happening quite frequently, and for a variety of reasons, it's not the same particular issue, it's a variety of reasons, I think a lot of customers will be happy to hear about this.
Sadia, Krista, thanks so much.
Yeah, so many of those stories really coming in is quite extraordinary, really, isn't it? We're going to be bringing more of that. We're going to be talking to Tim Farron, who is one of the MPs from an area that's been impacted by this, from the Lib Dems, of course, former leader. He's going to be talking a bit more about that story as well.
A mother living next to 25,000 tonnes of illegal waste in Wigan has told Sky News her house has become a prison, with the situation tearing her family apart.
So Sky first visited the sites in Bickershaw last year, and despite months of complaints from residents, no clean-up's begun. And some people are now talking about a north-south divide. So in other words, it wouldn't happen if it was in the south. Millions of pounds were set aside to clear a similar-sized tip in Oxfordshire, as Dan Whitehead reports.
Just before Christmas, we started hearing scurrying, and we ended up with rats. As you can smell, we still have evidence of rats.
Venetia and her family, the 25,000 tonnes of rotting waste just metres from her house, has become a living nightmare.
We could see rats just running along our fences, running down the street on the front. They were just everywhere.
As well as rats, maggots and flies, the impact of this illegal waste dump has ripped her family in two.
Even to this day, 17 months on, the smell's make him physically sick. So he now only spends 1 or 2 nights a week at my house.
So one of your children has had to move out because of this?
Yes. Move in with his mother, with my mother-in-law. It's teared our family apart, and it puts stress on the family as well. Obviously our mental health isn't great. It's like being separated parents, even though me and my partner together, we're sharing the child with the grandparents. Because I can't keep saying, oh, soon it'll be cleared up, soon it'll be cleared up, because it isn't. And I don't know what else to tell my child why he has to live in this prison, because it's like prison.
Whilst Nisha feels trapped, there is a different story 200 miles south. Sky footage of a similar-sized tip in Kidlington in Oxfordshire made headlines just before Christmas. But 2 weeks ago, a £9 million tender to clear up the waste was issued, with the work set to potentially begin next month. We're told that the site down in Kidlington is being cleared because of a serious fire risk, which could impact a major A-road and power supplies. But here in Wigan, a 9-day fire here last summer was declared a major incident. Despite that, the impact on the local residents and the school that backs onto the dump, there is no multi-million-pound tender to remove this waste. When the fire broke out here in Bickershaw, the nearby primary, whose playing field lies in the shadow of this mountain of waste, was forced to close. The local MP has criticised the Environment Agency, suggesting it prioritises middle-class areas over working-class towns. The issue highlighted in the House of Lords just last week.
It's clear to me that the report that Sky did, that the nature of the waste in the Bickershaw site, it's hazardous waste, it's rotting waste, it's already been on fire for 9 days, forcing the local primary school to close. That it really should be a high priority for the safety of the residents and the school children there.
In a statement, the Environment Agency told Sky News new information has come to light about the rapidly escalating fire risks at the Kidlington site, with potential to close the A34 major highway and impact key electrical supplies, which has meant we have taken the exceptional decision to clear the site as soon as possible. This does not undermine the real impacts to the local community in Wigan. We are doing everything within our power to ensure that the perpetrators pay the price to clean up the site, rather than taxpayers. But at the moment, there is no clean-up.
How does that make you feel that down in Oxfordshire, within weeks, there's millions available? And what are we on here, a year and a half?
Yeah, 17 months exactly.
How does that make you feel?
Like they don't care. No one cares what up here in North, they're not bothered. I feel like I've failed, even though it's not my doing. I just feel like as a parent, I'm failing. And I'm fighting, and I'm not winning the battle.
Dan Whitehead, Sky News in Wigan.
Well, let's talk to Dan. Dan, what is your assessment on whether there is really a north-south divide, on whether this wouldn't have happened in the south?
Well, you look at the evidence and the reasons given by the government, the Environment Agency, as to why such quick action was taken down in leafy Oxfordshire, down in the south. And it does raise serious questions, doesn't it? The talk of a fire risk affecting an A road. There's no houses or residents next to that. And here we are outside the dump here of a similar size, 25,000 tonnes here in Wigan. And we are 10 metres or so away from the houses. And if you are getting children not living in their homes, we were inside the school playground yesterday, kids having to run around with quite literally this mountain of waste behind them, you can understand the feeling and the anger amongst residents. Obviously, behind the scenes here, there are criminal investigations at both ends of the country, the Environment Agency leading that criminal investigation. So that complicates things and muddies things further. And I think the other thing to say about this huge illegal waste situation is that each situation is completely unique because who owns the land is extremely complicated. Often they're subletted and sub-rented out, and it's a massive chain. So it's really complicated for an agency which many argue is under-resourced. And there are some who say, actually, this has become such a difficult issue here. Organised criminal gangs making millions of pounds, that should this be handed over to someone like the National Crime Agency instead, as this problem gets worse and worse. But on the ground, the situation is for the residents that they are struggling with health and they are backed onto a place that, not too bad, the smell at the moment, but we're all looking forward to warmer weather. These residents are not looking forward to the spring and the summer, because that is when the heat starts, that is when the smell here chokes you, absolutely. And Sky has been here previously back in October and experienced that choking smell that hits you in the lungs, and they're not looking forward to that. So the real life impact is absolutely huge, and very frustrating for the residents up here in the north when they see potentially next month £9 million, more than that, set aside by the government because of a risk of fire, given that there was a major incident and a 9-day fire here that broke out last summer.
Dan, great stuff. Thanks so much for that. Dan Whitehead there for us. Well, Donald Trump, just under an hour ago, has criticised Britain's plans to cede control of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, saying it's another reason why America should acquire Greenland. He described us as the decision as great stupidity from the UK. Let's discuss it and much more with Sir Peter Westmacott, the former ambassador to the US, who joins me now. Sir Peter, very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Wilfred.
This has come out less than an hour ago. How significant is it? How much pressure does it put on the Prime Minister?
I think it's potentially another real headache, partly because there is not total political unity in Westminster about the Chagos Diego Garcia handover. It's still going through various parts of the parliamentary process, is my understanding. There are a number of people who know a lot about our overseas territories and the rights of the people who lived there and the right of return of the Chagosians who remain a bit unhappy about it. But one of the reasons why the government went ahead with this process, and we're told it's going to cost something like £90 million a year for 100 years to British taxpayers, so it's a lot of money, is that they were told that this was fine by the Americans. And the reason we're doing it, of course, is because Diego Garcia is a hugely important military base with a British flag on it, but used by the United States of America. It's one of the many very significant strategic assets that the United Kingdom makes available to the United States under our unique defence and intelligence partnership. So it's a big thing. And if the Americans are now saying this is a daft idea, if they really are saying that, then I think that complicates life politically for the government. But it may be an exercise in leverage. Maybe President Trump didn't sign off on it before, though I understand that he did, and the White House were content with this package, because the lawyers have fundamentally advised the British government, and I think the American government, that they've got no choice to do this. But is he just using this in order to say, this is why I need Greenland, because I'm fed up with something else going on in a different part of the world? Not quite clear. The last sentence of that statement suggests that this is an exercise in leverage to make more trouble, if you like, on Greenland. So I think unclear, but it certainly makes the government's life, I'm afraid, more complicated.
So as you say, he does link to Greenland at the end of the statement. Just focusing on the Chagos deal, so obviously the legislative process to put into place the deal that the two executive branches of the UK and Mauritius negotiated is near completion. The Lords have done their best to hold it up. It's gone back to the Commons, albeit with a couple of Lords' amendments on it, so it still needs to get through a final hurdle. Could a deal like this be scrapped? Obviously, it's not the letter of the law yet, but we've made promises, government to government, UK to Mauritius. Could we U-turn on it?
Well, if I was a politician, I would say I don't answer hypotheticals. But I honestly don't know at this stage, Wilfred. This has come out from left field, as they say in America. It's a bit of a surprise. Legally, constitutionally, yes, the thing has not yet gone through. It is not a done deal ratified by the British Parliament. So I suppose it could be reopened. But in a sense, to what end? I don't think the government is going to want to go against the legal advice, which I think its own Attorney General was giving in an earlier stage, that it had no choice but to cede sovereignty, even though Mauritius has never actually owned Diego Garcia. It's not about giving it back. It is a claim that Mauritius has made on these territories, which are 1,500 miles away from Mauritius.
Do you
and
agree
which the
with
lawyers
that legal advice?
Do you know, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I can't tell you whether...
But in the cut and thrust of foreign diplomacy, do you think we should just have kept it in the first place?
If there really was no alternative, then, you know, the government is doing the right thing. But it was important to get the Americans on board because the reason why we're doing it is for them. It's not really for the British national interest. It's part of what we bring to the defence relationship with America. If the United States is now saying this is a terrible deal, we don't want it, then I think the government may want to look afresh at parts of this deal. You know, but I'm not close enough to the current action to give you an authoritative view.
Should the Prime Minister now go to Davos?
I think I'm right in saying that he's, you know, the one of the major players at the European level, the G7 level, not going. I sensed that last night wasn't going to, you know, would smack a little bit of panic. And by the way, what's the point if everybody turns up in Davos? Are you sure you're going to have a meaningful conversation with Donald Trump, which is the main reason for going there? Does he need to go there for solidarity with the other Europeans? Not sure, because everybody's buzzing around and there's thousands of people doing the business. I don't know. I'm not convinced that the Diego Garcia Chagos story alters that calculation. But what will be important, I think, is for him to keep that dialogue going with the president. The problem is that this is a pretty unpleasant tweet from the President of the United States at a time when the Prime Minister has rightly prided himself on having useful, constructive, positive, friendly conversations in private with the President of the United States. And here he is ranting in public against the British government.
In light as well of all of the things in recent weeks towards European and UK partners on Greenland, should we almost ignore this latest wish from the President because he's not working with us?
Do you mean about Greenland or do you mean about...
About Chagos, about everything. Has the line been crossed by the US President?
You could ignore it and just get on with what we're doing, except that, as I say, the main reason we're doing this, apart from legal advice that we've got no choice because of a judgment by the United Nations General Assembly legal specialists, is we're doing this for America. You know, Diego Garcia is hugely important military base for the Americans in the middle of the Indian Ocean. It's from Diego Garcia that they have launched military operations around the Middle East over the years and probably intend to in the future. So if they really don't like it, then we may want to think again. Equally, it may just be, you know, a middle-of-the-night rant and something that he forgets about, and just a means of bringing pressure to bear on us over Greenland, because he's clearly miffed that a number of the European leaders, Macron as well, he's leaked his private messages to him, are not going along with his idea that America has got to have Greenland and that it's got to be American for one of his, dare I say it, vanity projects, rather than because it matters for national security, which it doesn't, because America's got access to everything it could possibly want at Greenland already.
Sir Peter, fascinating as always. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Wilfred.
Absolutely fascinating discussion there, and as you say, kind of still waiting to see if it's a middle-of-the-night rant or something the UK government really needs to act on.
We shall see when the days ahead unfold. Of course, the President should be asleep right now. He's doing that tweet, as you say, about 2 a.m. or 1:30 a.m. his local time.
We're talking maternity next, something that we've really been focusing on this programme. There's a call to action, asking women to share their experiences to try and improve care.
There's a lot of firing going on.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, sir.
Let's go. Watch, wait. Right, we're going to get in. Right, get in. Get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. Next step for them quite often is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Whoa. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera, turn around and go away. Thank you very much. Okay, but
Listen,
I told you 3 times.
They saw 2 guys, 2 bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
But that is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent. Sky News has been given exclusive data. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America. Sky News has found Nazi speeches and marching music have been used as background sound on tens of thousands of TikTok videos. We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Welcome to the world.
Come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? This is the war game.
There were a number of armed security.
We want to discover, to find out what's really going on.
Everything you need to know about British politics in about 20 minutes.
I actually don't like political drama.
So, where next?
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Middle East correspondent. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think is really unusual? Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started. Welcome back. Now, we talk an awful lot about maternity services on this programme, and today there's a call to action for women to share their stories. So rather than me putting my own questions to Baroness Amos, who's leading this review, we wanted to hear from some of the women we've spoken to.
There needs to be accountability, not just learning lessons, but acting upon them, so that no family feels ignored again. It needs to look honestly at how targets, staffing pressures and culture impact on safety. Women aren't asking for perfection. We're asking to be listened to, respected, and be kept safe.
We can't have a maternity system where being dismissed, ignored, and being treated with apathy is the norm. We need action to address this because it causes so much trauma. We need the government to commit to making changes within reasonable timeframes because all we've had so far is broken promises.
Well, let's talk now to the chair of the Independent National Maternity and Neonatal Investigation, Baroness Amos. I just want to get your reaction to some of what we just heard there from Stefan, from Grace and from Naya. And I guess my main thing is talking to these women, they just haven't got any faith that anything's going to change.
Well, Sophie, good morning and thank you. Today is all about saying to women who've experienced pregnancies, members of their family who've supported them, to please fill out the survey that we are launching today. It will be available for 2 months because I want to hear about everyone's experience. And I completely understand that women and their families have lost faith in the system. I have talked to so many of them, listened to the most traumatic experiences. There are things that women and their families are having to go through that should not be happening in Britain today. And what we are trying to do is to come up with a set of recommendations that will mean that we can go forward positive about the kind of compassionate, safe care that women are looking for, that women and their families are looking for. So that's why I want to hear about those experiences. They're at the heart of what we are seeking to do.
One of the things that comes up again and again, and you know, we have spoken to an awful lot of women, a lot of people coming and getting in touch with us on this show, understandably, is midwives. I think if there's one thing, that's what I would say. So, you know, we heard just then from Grace talking about looking honestly at staffing pressures. We heard from Naya talking about the need to be treated with respect. And obviously, I want to make the point there are loads of amazing midwives out there doing a great job. But I think the thing that does consistently come up is people feel there are not enough midwives because of staffing pressure, or that they're not trained enough, or they're not being compassionate enough, treating women like people to listen to. Is this all about funding, really, for properly trained midwives?
There are a whole range of issues that are coming through the discussions that I'm having with families, with those who are working in the NHS, who are working on these issues. There are a set of common themes that I'm hearing time and time again. So, yes, funding is part of it, training is part of it, culture is part of it. I've heard a lot, and I want to hear more, because there are women and families out there who don't come forward, they don't talk about their experiences, and I completely understand this is really, really, really hard to do. But with this call for evidence, there is support available. We have tried to make it as straightforward as possible. If in filling it out, women and their families want to stop, if there are questions they don't want to answer, all of that is possible. It is translated into 7 different languages. There are interpreters who are available to support. It's online, but you can also do a postal version, and there is an easy-to-read version as well. I really want to hear from women and families who don't normally engage with us.
It's such an important message, and a message that we hope you're hearing loud and clear as well. If you've had an issue with maternity care, something to get across, get in touch with Baroness Amos. Now's your chance to try and make change happen. Thank you very much for being on the programme today. I have to say it's one of the things I've been most staggered by since joining Mornings, the overwhelming response from women who want to make change on maternity services, and it is something we're going to keep covering on this programme and amplifying the voices of women like Grace and Naya. More to come in just a few moments.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
Sophy and Wilf, good morning from me as well. A very busy show, some breaking news to bring you.
President Trump takes aim at the United Kingdom, calling plans to cede Chagos Island's sovereignty to Mauritius an act of great stupidity.
And he says that is another reason that Greenland needs to be handed to the United States. This morning, he also accused Denmark of being unable to protect Greenland.
The government considers introducing a social media ban for under 16s.
And also today, nice quiet day for us, we should finally find out whether China's mega embassy in the heart of London is going to get the go-ahead.
And a family feud out in the open. Brooklyn Peltz Beckham breaks his silence on the alleged rift with his parents.
Good morning. President Trump has launched an attack on the UK, an extraordinary attack, over the decision to hand sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. He's posted this on Truth Social and he's called it an act of great stupidity. He also stepped up his rhetoric on Greenland, again saying America has to have it and accusing Denmark of being unable to protect it. He's leaving the US for Davos later today for the World Economic Forum, where European leaders will be hoping to influence a president who is so far showing no signs of backing down. Well, let's look at the astonishing statement that he made relating to the UK and in particular those Chagos Islands. So he said, shockingly, our brilliant NATO ally, the United Kingdom, is currently planning to give away the island of Diego Garcia, the site of a vital US military base, to Mauritius, and to do so for no reason whatsoever. There is no doubt that China and Russia has noticed this act of total weakness. These are international powers who only recognise strength, which is why the United States of America, under my leadership, is now, after only 1 year, respected like never before. The UK giving away extremely important land is an act of great stupidity, capitalise, and is another in a very long line of national security reasons why Greenland has to be acquired. And then he continues, Denmark and its European allies have to do the right thing. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And he signs it off, President Donald J. Trump. Well, here is the take of our US correspondent, Mark Stone.
Diego Garcia is part of the Chagos Islands, and mid-year last year, the United Kingdom made a controversial decision, but a decision nonetheless, to hand sovereignty of the Chagos Islands back to Mauritius, and that, of course, included Diego Garcia. Now, the reason that the president the reason that America in general over the past year has been exercised about this is because Diego Garcia is a very important, strategically important military base for the United States, as it is for the United Kingdom. But as part of the deal to hand sovereignty back to Mauritius, a 99-year lease was put in place for Diego Garcia precisely so that the Americans and the British would be able still to operate there and effectively to run it for themselves. So that's the first point. But the second point is all this was done and dusted. And mid-year last year, I think it was May last year, it was something the Americans were really worried, the Brits were really worried about. Would the Americans have a problem with the whole issue of Diego Garcia and the Chagos? And mid-year last year, Trump was president, there was no problem. And yet suddenly, and look, the way you read that, and I'm only just reading it now as we speak as well, the sort of vibe and the tone of Trump's statement, which was, 15 minutes ago he released this, almost is as if he's only just discovered that this is happening. It's extraordinary. But look, Sophie, Wilf, the broader point is that, I was saying a day ago that it feels as though the wheels are truly coming off the transatlantic alliance, whether that be with the UK or with the European Union. But for the UK, the special relationship, I mean, it's in a really bad way right now. And remember that Keir Starmer, he's worked so hard and has had some success, no question, at trying to be the Trump whisperer, trying to be the guy who is able to be almost the bridge from Europe to America under Trump, to try and work out what on earth is going on. Right now, that feels like a very tricky place that Keir Starmer is in.
A tricky place, indeed, as Mark's just outlining. We did have a representative from the government just moments, really, after that news broke on the Chagos Islands. This is what the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, Darren Jones, had to say.
We've gone around this quite a lot already. We've secured the islands there as a military base for the next 100 years. We're just about finishing off the legislative process in Parliament to enable that to happen. And I think, as your colleague alluded to, this was a deal that was welcomed at the time by the American administration, but also by European allies and others, given its strategic significance in the world. We were in a tricky spot in that the island was previously part of the British Empire. There were legal challenges to the island and those types of things. And so we needed to find a modern application to protect its military capabilities, which we all rely on, which is what we've done.
Well, we mentioned that Donald Trump's been doubling down on his ambition to control Greenland overnight, telling journalists that America has to have it. Let's have a listen to the president speaking just shortly before the programme.
We have to have it. They have to have this done. They can't protect it. Denmark, they're wonderful people. And I know the leaders are very good people, but they don't even go there. And, you know, because the boat went there 500 years ago and then left, that doesn't give you title to property. So we'll be talking about it with the various people. We've had tremendous success, and I've done more for NATO than anybody else. I don't think you'd have NATO right now. I got them to go 5% and pay as opposed to 2% and not pay. I've done more than any other American president for NATO by far.
Well, let's discuss all of this. Alex is here to discuss the sort of domestic political implications of it. I mean, there's the embarrassment of being conciliatory to the president 24 hours ago and having this broadside on the Chagos Islands to come. I think there's another nuance. On Greenland, pretty much everyone in Parliament, just regardless of political party, was agreed with the Prime Minister that we needed to push back on what Donald Trump was doing, whereas this Chagos thing will really lead to a lot of people saying, I kind of agree with President Trump on this.
Yeah, Chagos is much more difficult for Keir Starmer domestically. The Tories have called it an act of surrender, but the UK has been ploughing on with it. And I think part of their argument for doing that was that the White House seemed to be OK with it just in May. And now all of a sudden, Trump's coming out and saying it's an act of stupidity. It's really, I think, will have caught Keir Starmer off guard.
It's confusing, isn't it? Because, I mean, that's kind of what Peter Westbrook was saying to you as well. I mean, it felt like this was something the Americans were on board with, right?
But I think this is just another kind of example of Donald Trump just trying to get us into line, basically. And we're not doing it, so he's going to cause more embarrassment for us. Yeah.
I think it's another example of how hard it is now to deal with the US as an ally. If, those details are accurate, to U-turn in such a big way makes it, even impossible to deal with. What about just the domestic politics of all of this? The approach that the Prime Minister took yesterday and the thanks for it he's getting from the US President?
So I thought it was interesting when Darren Jones was on just shortly, he was saying that calm British diplomacy was the right way forward. And that seemed to be what Keir Starmer was trying to do yesterday, really trying to de-escalate the row. But I think with Greenland and Trump's continuing threats with that, and now with this Chagos intervention, I'm not sure calm discussion is really on the menu at the moment.
Yeah, this is what it feels like, isn't it? And I have to say, you look at the Donald Trump Truth Social post, his big thing is strength is what people respect. And he's talking there about, China and Russia, but you could also say the same as the United States as well, right?
Well, for sure. I mean, it's he's definitely linking the Greenland point to this. There's no doubt about that. It's why some people are calling for, more military spending and the like here. Do you think he has to go to Davos now, the Prime Minister? Is he likely to U-turn? I mean, it'd be such a story to U-turn now after this that I guess he probably won't. But it's impossible. We're all up and no idea what he's going to do.
I guess maybe putting up a brave face might be a good thing, because if he's not there, maybe he's in the background on the back foot, and that's really not an image he wants to project at the moment, even though that's kind of where Donald Trump is forcing him to be.
Which, by the way, is not just so much of being not there whilst his European peers are there. He's not there whilst Nigel Farage is. Yeah. I think that's really the key point.
And Chagos has provided Nigel Farage with another opportunity to have a go and hit the government where they're vulnerable. Yeah,
it's totally true. Alex, thank you so much. Alex Rogers there with that analysis. We're going to talk about social media next.
We are. The government is considering adopting an Australia-style ban on social media for children under the age of 16.
So they've been talking about this for ages, but now they're launching a consultation to consider various options to protect children online. The one thing that they are particularly focusing on is these kind of so-called addictive app features, like infinite scrolling, also algorithms too. Our education reporter, Anjum Pierback, is with us. So it feels like they've moved quite a lot on this.
It seems like they've really taken some affirmative steps to kind of roll out this consultation and ask, you know, the sector, parents, campaigners, everybody is going to have like that opportunity to be able to have their say and their voice heard on this very important issue. And it seems like it's happened very quickly. I think since the ban in Australia, I think they've taken some note and people are sitting up and taking notice of this. And the consultation has been really positively received. We've seen that teaching unions have kind of responded very positively to this. Bridget Phillipson has said, like, schools are no place for phones at all. She said, like, there's no ifs and no buts. We don't want phones to be in school. The issue is that 90% of secondary schools already have a no phone policy and 99% of primary schools have a no phone policy. So it's not just what happens at school. The issue with social media is that it lives 24/7, and it's that kind of infinite scrolling or doom scrolling that young people are partaking in, and the impact that that has, and the hours and hours of time that is spent, you know, by young people on these platforms, which can be quite an issue. And I know, having personally dealt with the fallout of what happens on those platforms, it does come back into school where kids are posting things or not posting things, or there's bullying that takes place online. And inevitably, school becomes a place where those things then have to be dealt with and addressed.
It's interesting timing for this sort of consultation to start. We had Molly Russell's dad on yesterday, Ian Russell, talking about this topic, and he is actually not in favour of going this far for a ban, partly because it would take so long to implement. I mean, what are we hearing from the government about when they want to make a decision on this and the other alternatives that they're considering?
So there's a few layers to this issue, and I think one of the things that the consultation will do is throw up those issues, so things like the age restriction, which platforms would be involved, and how the implementation would actually take place. Is it going to be the responsibility of those platforms to ensure that a particular age restriction is applied? How would that even be done? Is it going to be facial recognition? Is there going to be some kind of validation of the child's age, and what would that look like? I know there might be some ministers who are visiting Australia to see how it's being done there and how it's being rolled out, but I think you're absolutely right. There are different layers and facets to this issue that really need to be unpicked and scrutinised in quite detail. And I think that's what they're planning to do with the consultation. But some people are saying the consultation is just another form of a delay to take some kind of more decisive action.
Yeah, nothing's going to happen soon.
No.
And Christoph, thank you.
Thank you.
Can you bring you the update on this train crash in Spain that we were talking about yesterday? Because 40 people killed after two high-speed trains derailed in southern Spain. It happened on Sunday. And a high-speed train operator in Spain, it said its 6189 service was travelling between Malaga and Madrid. Around 300 people on board when it derailed.
The Spanish king, King Felipe, is expected to visit the accident site later today. Our Europe correspondent, Ali Bunkel, is live in Cordoba for us. Ali, what is the latest in this tragic event?
Well, the recovery operation is ongoing. We're in Cordoba, which is where the police and rescue operation is being coordinated from, and the recovery operation is ongoing. The official number of dead has now risen to 41, but they have spotted more bodies that are yet to recover, and there are, they estimate, around 43 people still missing, and so there is a sort of a working assumption that when they lift one of the trains, which they're hoping to do possibly this morning or at some point today, they will find more bodies under that. So the expectation is that the death toll will rise, and possibly rise quite considerably over the next day or two. Spain's worst train accident for many, many years, and investigations have been launched to try and establish how it happened. We saw the Spanish Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, visit the scene yesterday and promising to get answers as part of that investigation. And King Felipe, as you say, will be visiting, we expect today. He's flown back from Greece early. He was in Greece attending a family funeral, and so he's returned as well to go to the site, and we've now entered an official 3-day period of mourning.
Alistair, thank you very much indeed. Alistair Bunkle speaking to us there from the area where that appalling train derailment happened.
And we wanted to bring you just an update quickly on the issue around the Chagos Islands, because we said earlier how on Greenland most of the political parties were united with Keir Starmer against the position of the President of the United States. Well, we're seeing more and more how many are standing with the President of the United States when it comes to the Chagos Islands. The leader of the Conservatives, Kemi Badenoch, has just posted about this, saying, "Paying to surrender the Chagos Islands is not just an act of stupidity, but of complete sabotage."
She goes on to say, "I've been clear, and unfortunately on this issue, President Trump is right. Keir Starmer's plan to give away the Chagos Islands is a terrible policy that weakens UK security and hands away our sovereign territory. And to top it all off, it makes us and our NATO allies weaker in the face of our enemies."
What's so interesting is this is posted with a picture of Speaker Johnson, who, of course, we interviewed on Friday and had played out yesterday. She says, "Last night I met Speaker Johnson. We are united in that view. Britain and America's interest aligns. Keir Starmer has the chance to change course on Chagos." Then one throwaway line at the end. "Conservatives call on President Trump to reconsider Greenland." I mean, quite extraordinary, actually, that you know, what, 3 paragraphs, one throwaway line at the end to say we disagree with the President on Greenland. And I think that's showing quite a lot of political opportunism when there's a really big couple of national security issues and you're kind of not really weighing them up equally there to just say, as a footnote, oh, maybe change your view on Greenland, please, Mr. President.
I think it also highlights, too, that politically reopening the argument about Chagos is, frankly, a political nightmare for Keir Starmer.
No
with
doubt.
The Conservatives here, Nigel Farage and Reform probably taking an even stronger line as well. This is something that the UK government could do with like a hole in the head.
I'm just going to say as well that the Speaker is addressing Parliament today. Again, come back to that, how this is the third most important politician in the United States. Of course, he's the Speaker of the House of Representatives. He is addressing Parliament here, initially to celebrate the special relationship. And we thought over the weekend, actually, with the latest salvo of threats of tariffs from the US President to the UK because of Greenland, that it would completely change the tone and you'd see a united Parliament slightly against the sort of gist of direction of travel, the latest direction of travel in the US. This is really interesting. It's almost like he's going to be welcomed again and there's going to be an area of an agreement. Clearly, this will come up in his speech, I would imagine. By the way, not to mention, we're meant to get a date today, wasn't it, on the Chinese super embassy. So the headaches are significant.
Yeah.
For Keir Starmer.
Big week in Davos. An awful lot going on the world stage, as we were just saying. Lots of world leaders are going there. It's the first full day of the World Economic Forum. One person who's not going to be there, though, is Keir Starmer.
For now, at least. Let's get out because Paul Kelso's there for us and can speak to someone with a great perspective on what is or isn't going through the President's head at the moment. Paul, over to you.
Yeah, that's the key question, Wilf, here in Davos. Whatever the plan was for this week, they were always looking forward to Donald Trump arriving, but whatever the agenda was, he has upended with these threats to levy tariffs on some of the US's closest historic allies. That will be the focus of attention here, both publicly and privately. We have some of the major European players, not Sir Keir Starmer, but the President of the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen, will be giving a speech mid-morning here, where publicly at least, you can set out where the European Commission is thinking is at on what retaliation might look like and how they want to handle this incredibly tricky diplomatic moment. Emmanuel Macron, the French president, will speak after her. Of course, some of his direct negotiations with Donald Trump have been published by the President of the United States this morning, remarkably, although perhaps not so remarkable for this president, on his Truth Social account, details of private conversations. Again, we'll hear President Macron publicly, but all of them will be trying to second guess what the President of the US is thinking as he prepares to arrive here. One man who will have a better sense than most is Anthony Scaramucci. Many of you will know, worked for the President briefly, has been a very keen critic of him. Anthony, what is going on right now with this President's move?
He's a reality television producer, and so you create conflict, you create drama, some level of histrionics, and then you have a climactic situation where it goes away. And so I think that's going to happen. I think people are going to be surprised by him this week, where if you remember the way he treated Mayor Mondani when he entered the Oval Office, I think it's going to be a little bit of that. You'll probably see a Trump charm offensive, primarily because nobody's expecting that. And so that's sort of the reflexive contrarianism that's part of his nature.
If we go back to the start of this, when you saw tariffs as the weapon here and Greenland as the prize, did you see this as a really serious moment, or do you think this is the start of a negotiation?
I mean, listen, I don't see it as a serious moment. I mean, it would be a cataclysmic thing to do, and I've met with several of the congressional leaders here who are dead set against it, and so it's more of a positional bargaining thing for him, but it's also he wants your eyes and ears on him. And so that's really what it is more than anything else.
So. One thing that strikes me this morning is the timing of this latest fusillade of Truth Social posts, sharing Macron's messages, a message to
to Rutte, the NATO chair, earlier in the year.
It doesn't feel coincidental. It's the moment everyone's waking up here and checking their phones and devices. This is more choreographed than perhaps he would like us to think.
Of course, and also he wants to put everybody on guard. He wants everybody, anything that you would expect from a traditional president, he'll do the exact opposite. And so who would share things like that? Would you imagine President Obama or President Nixon, or you pick a president doing that? Of course, they wouldn't do that, but you can't see him as a traditional president. I think the Europeans are making a mistake there with that. I think they've got to, they got to show some backbone here. It's the only thing he responds to. Look at what he did with President Xi. On April 2nd, quote-unquote Liberation Day, he was going to put a hurt on the Chinese. He said, well, you know what, we got all the rare earth minerals, and we're making all your pharmaceuticals. And he walked it back to the point where he's giving them the chips from NVIDIA. And so, you got to, the flattery doesn't work. Sitting around the Resolute desk in the Oval Office like your school kids, not going to work with the guy. Okay, you got to treat him very differently.
So
think like a New Yorker.
Okay, because the response has been very old school. It's been guarded. We're going to hear speeches. There's going to be bilaterals between. You're saying that response might work for previous administrations.
I think that response is not going to work with them. And listen, there's probably a diplomatic solution in Greenland, and there's probably are some national security issues for all of us, all European nations, all free nations in the Western liberal democracies. We probably need to work together there. And so doing it the way he's doing it is obviously misguided. I don't think anybody except for him agrees with that. Even his staff is shaking their heads about this one.
I'm going to spin the map slightly. He's brought the Chagos Islands, Diego Garcia, into the picture this morning, describing a decision we thought he'd backed of the UK to cede control of that territory. He's calling that misguided, calling it a stupid decision this morning. Again, how much of a worry should that be for the UK?
So again, it's the same script. Okay, so you just follow the. I mean, we're going into season 2 now, or but it's the same script. Okay, histrionics, drama, get everybody upset, watch it on television, get a giggle to himself, and then work it out. And that's what's going to happen.
Wilf, I think you've got some questions you'd like to put to Anthony while we've got him here, as we brave the cold here.
And Anthony, great to see you. I have 2 quick questions. The first, I mean, one thing we've been dwelling on here in the last 48 hours is we can't really retaliate much when it comes to tariffs. I mean, we're not enough of a trading partner that it would really damage the US, and you just risk a spiral. Do you think the president would be upset if we pulled the King's State visit? Is that something that we should do and he'd care about? Or again, does it just highlight the lack of cards that Keir Starmer has?
Well, listen, I think that's going to be up to the King and the Prime Minister. I just think that you've got to get back into a European coalition. If you're not a big enough trading partner, the totality of you is a very big trading partner. And, it's been very wise for Europe not to respond with reciprocal or retaliatory tariffs. But one has to wonder now if you've got to put some teeth into the negotiation with President Trump. As it relates to the King, frankly, I think the King did an amazing job for the UK with that state visit earlier in the year. And I think that I would leave that on the table for now, frankly.
And then just finally, 1 year into Trump 2, how does it differ in your eyes to Trump 1?
Well, I mean, the adults have left the room, and so it's the president doing what he always wanted to do. You know, Donald Trump Jr. once said, "Let Trump be Trump." Jim Mattis wasn't going to do that. General Kelly wasn't going to do that. H.R. McMaster. But the people in the room with him today, many of which I think some of the Republican senators are admitting here today that they made mistakes in terms of the confirmation process with some of these cabinet officials. But I think this is a unhinged season, and I just go back to the first year of the second season of Trump. You know, J.D. Vance was here in Europe at the Munich Security Conference excoriating the European leaders, and so I predict Trump will not do that because that's sort of a replay of last season. And so remember, he's producing a show, and it's your job and my job to comment on it and watch it and be riveted to it. And let's face it, he's pretty good at that.
Anthony, and you're pretty good at the commentary. We thank you for it this morning. Thanks to Paul as well. We'll be back out during the course of the show and the week with Paul in Davos.
God, there's something about Davos that just looks so crisp and cold and beautiful whenever you sort of see those pictures from there. Keir Starmer, of course, not there, but look, everybody is going to have all eyes on the US president, and as Anthony Starmer-Karamirci was just saying, trying to work out a Europe response. Of course, no one more so than the Danes. We did hear from the Denmark economy minister, who said they're keeping all options on the table in response.
We don't rule out anything at the moment, but it's what's most important for us, besides from seeking the dialogue with the United States and trying to prevent escalation, will be to have a very close contact with all our European friends and our allies to see if we can find a common way forward from here. We will, of course, be discussing the anti-cohesion instrument, but also the countermeasures that will be put into place on February 6th if no one does anything. So all options are on the table.
The Danish economy minister there speaking in Brussels, I think. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be talking all things Keir Starmer with Anthony Selden. We had a sort of longer-term piece to discuss with him, but there's a lot of short-term news to ask him about as well.
Yeah, forget the feature pieces.
Although I still want to talk about that because it was a really interesting article he wrote in The Observer over the weekend. We'll be right back with Sir Anthony.
There's a fresh look to your news from 10 on Sky News.
It's a new show called The Wrap, every night of the week.
We'll still bring you the day's biggest stories,
but with more lively debate,
more in-depth commentary,
and more of what you need to know.
Plus a look at what's making tomorrow's headlines.
The Wrap.
Everything wrapped up for you from 10 on Sky News.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Welcome back. A reminder of the headlines this morning. Donald Trump has launched an attack on the UK over the decision to hand the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. In a post on Truth Social, he called the decision an act of great stupidity. Meanwhile, the US president has doubled down on his ambition to control Greenland, accusing Denmark of being incapable of defending the territory.
The government is moving a step closer to a potential ban on social media for children under the age of 16 after Australia, of course, put in place the world first ban in December. They've been under pressure from backbench MPs, and now they've launched a consultation.
Water companies will be required to carry out infrastructure checks to prevent major failures under new plans to revamp the industry. Ministers are set to unveil a series of reforms to the water industry as they move ahead with a major shake-up, including the introduction of a new regulator. The Prime Minister has had a turbulent 2025, including several U-turns, stagnant economic growth and speculation over a potential leadership challenge. As another already challenging year gets underway, what might the future hold for Keir Starmer? Joining us is the historian and author Sir Anthony Selden. Very good morning to you, Sir Anthony. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning. Nice to be on.
We have to start with this morning's news. 24 hours after a very rare, sudden press conference from the Prime Minister, where he's essentially said quiet diplomacy is the way forward with the President. He's been thanked with a broadside on Truth Social linked to the Chagos Islands. Does the Prime Minister have to change tact now with the President?
I think that the Prime Minister should just keep doing what he's doing, because the American president changes so rapidly, and somebody has to be stable, and that should be the Prime Minister. We know that the American president changes his mind several times every day.
You're cutting out a little bit, but we're going to try and persevere with the connection. So just to... you say that the Keir Starmer needs to keep doing what he's doing. I just wonder what you mean by that. How would you assess what he is doing? Is he kind of fence-sitting? Is he trying to sidle up to Donald Trump? Is he trying to do what he wants without worrying about America? What is he doing that he should continue doing?
He's dealing with the most difficult American president in modern history, perhaps ever, certainly since the special relationship with Britain started in the First World War, and trying to second guess what he's thinking is very difficult. So he's trying to balance everything, Britain's interests, trying to avoid the prospect of tariffs, while also helping him to see sense on Greenland. So it's a very difficult juggling act for anybody in Downing Street.
In terms of how best to deal with the US President, Sir Anthony, you wrote an op-ed in The Observer this weekend. You suggested that Tony Blair should be brought back as Foreign Secretary. Do you think that would be something the President would like? And do you think Sir Tony would accept it?
Well, I don't know the answer to either of those. But what I do know is this. It is the most perilous moment in British and global affairs since the end of the Cold War. And you need a massive hitter for Britain on the world stage. It is taking up enormous quantities of the Prime Minister's time that he can and should be spending on domestic policy. And, you know, it struck a lot of people since I wrote that article as what an outlandish idea. But, you know, 3 times in the last 110 years, a prime minister has returned as the foreign secretary. And very quickly it was Arthur Balfour, Alec Douglas Hume, and most recently David Cameron. And there's something unusual and special about the foreign secretary position, whereby somebody who's held the power and clout of the prime minister's job has a particular authority on the world stage, and particularly at this perilous moment in our history. So to have somebody who was for 10 years prime minister, who knows and is known in every capital around the world, would, I think, enhance Britain's foreign policy clout, but also strengthen our security and bring real economic advantages and help with the EU also. So, I mean, it was one of 3 ideas in that op-ed for strengthening the government at this critical moment.
It's interesting, I guess, to do it. There's lots of factors that would be required to do it, but to do it requires quite a confident man to appoint a former star prime minister as one of your deputies. And I guess credit to Rishi Sunak that he got over that line to do it. Do you think Keir Starmer's got that in him?
I don't know again. I mean, Rishi Sunak was strengthened greatly, and so was Britain's position in the world by having a prime minister who'd been in office for 6 years as the foreign secretary. This is a special role. You need to have a big hitter who, whether in Beijing or Moscow or Kyiv or in the EU or in Washington, is a renowned figure, somebody who is used to talking to the most powerful figures in the world. So I don't know if Blair would accept it. I don't know if Starmer would offer it. I don't know if Starmer would offer the other ideas I suggested for really getting the economy and growth and getting the civil service totally reformed. Look, if you're the Labour leader and your polls are the lowest or amongst the lowest ever in your history, and if you have a challenger party in reform, and if you have sluggish growth and progress on the domestic front, why would you not want, for the sake of your country and party, to do the radical things that all the best prime ministers have done? They were great prime ministers because they thought the unthinkable.
So, Anthony, thanks for joining us. Good to see you.
Now, we have had many months of stories about water outages, of people being forced to buy bottled water, of schools shutting down because they can't access clean water. And now we've got the government strategy on how to deal with it all, because companies could be forced to undertake regular checks on their infrastructure under new government plans.
The proposed changes come in the wake of several outages, including in the southeast in the last week, which the government hopes could be avoided in future.
Well, we can talk now to the Liberal Democrat Environment spokesperson, Tim Farron. Great to have you here. So what do you make about these new changes then? Are you welcoming of them? Is it a step in the right direction?
Yeah, well, early days, because we've not seen all of the detail, what the government's floating, some bits of it we welcome. So the idea that we might have a regulator that is unified, you bring the EA, Environment Agency and Ofwat together, give them proper powers, that sounds good, and that they might be proactive and actually do something you'd have hoped might be happening already, but isn't, and that is making sure you check that infrastructure is in place. The happenings in Kent recently and Sussex may well have been averted if this kind of thing was done already. So I don't want to be churlish. There's things in this white paper I think that I welcome. But you remember, there's already been a Water Act in this Parliament 18 months ago, a bit less than 18 months ago, and now we've got another one coming. And you'd kind of hope maybe this time round it might be the radical change we really want, and it isn't. There's no mention at all in this white paper, we believe, about the ownership of the water companies.
So nationalisation?
Well, no. We would favour something which is more like having a mutual system, the idea that they are actually owned by their customers. Because what you've got at the moment is money leaking out of the water industry as well as the water in the pipes. And £1.2 billion last year in dividends going to shareholders, 20 million in bonuses for senior executives, at the same time as 3.6 million hours worth of sewage has been dumped into our lakes, rivers and seas. And so what we want is an ownership system which means that the money made through the water industry is reinvested in it.
I mean, you mentioned there the kind of bonuses and all this kind of thing, and I do feel like that is a real, I guess, slap in the face for people who've seen water outages, leaking pipes, schools being closed, businesses being shut down. I mean, do we need to just be way tougher on this kind of stuff?
Yes, and this is where I'm frustrated by the white paper and what is in it and what is not in it. So I'll give you, for instance, we talked about 3.6 million hours worth of sewage going into our waterways. We talk about hours because that's all we officially know. Duration is recorded, but volume isn't, and we all know you can have a quick deluge or you can have a lengthy trickle. We just don't know. So we had to do some Freedom of Information Act work, and in one of the lakes in my constituency, we found out there have been millions and millions of litres being pumped into the lake, but we only knew that because we'd had to go digging for it. And so
it's about the information, isn't it?
Well,
it's about
yes.
transparency.
So we think the water companies do not want volume to be measured, and the government seems to agree with them. And it feels as though, I mean, our Water UK, who speak on behalf of the water industry, are welcoming this white paper. Of course they are. They've managed to get bits tipex out of it that they didn't want in the first place. So I would love the government to be stronger. I gave the water bill, the first one we had in this Parliament, 5 out of 10.
What about this one, then?
5.5, maybe. It's a missed
opportunity. A bit of improvement, then.
Yeah, I mean, but it's a lack of ambition. It's not. There's a real injustice here. Bill payers not having water at all, or having sewage pumped into their waterways and being run ragged because you've got an industry that allows profiteering rather than focusing on what matters, which is water supply.
Can I ask about a story that was in The Guardian recently? It's about, you might have seen it, it's about the leadership. Yeah, I can tell you know what I'm going on to. This is about a significant number, they say, of Lib Dem MPs frustrated by what they see as the overly cautious leadership of Ed Davey. They're not saying, let's get rid of him, but what they're saying is, look, we've got a massive opportunity here. We need to be way more swashbuckling. We need to take a leaf out of Zach Polanski's book. What would you say?
I think it's nonsense. I mean, I've been a member of the largest ever Liberal Democrat parliamentary party and the smallest. Indeed, I was the leader of the smallest. And so I've seen these things come and go over 20 years. I will honestly say this is the most united Liberal Democrat parliamentary party that I have belonged to, and it's by far the biggest. And if you look at kind of the basics, I mean, when you look at leader polls, the majority of polls say Ed Davey is the most popular of the party leaders. Most pollsters will tell you that's the best indicator of how the party's going to do at the next election.
But you haven't... If you look at the polling, for example, I'm not saying you're doing really badly. You're not. You're doing pretty well. But I guess the point is that if you look at the Conservatives, which are, still suffering from decade and power, you look at the Labour Party, which their poll rating has plunged, and the quote here, Reform are assuming a place in the national debate, so are the Greens. We are content to not do this, and it isn't good enough. Like, let's take a few more risks.
Well, I think that's not true. I mean, here am I on your programme talking about a radical reform of the water industry, which is part of my brief. I mean, you've got the Liberal Democrats being the only party, literally in a crowded field, who are on the one hand calling out Trump for the outrageous behaviour in Greenland.
What do you say to the people briefing the Guardian?
But also saying that Britain should be in NATO and maintain our deterrent. I mean, in my experience, you find that sometimes people feel they're not getting enough limelight, and if they feel a bit grieved, come and talk to me. I will be a good ear. I will keep your secrets, and I won't go. I mean, journalists are marvellous, but don't go sharing your personal frustrations.
This is obviously, a viewpoint that, as a journalist, I don't necessarily agree with. Journalists are marvellous, and
they are marvellous.
The doors is always open for
Indeed,
both sides of the political debate.
My experience, and maybe I've even been in that position once upon a time, a million years ago. You feel like, oh, why am I not being preferred? And so people grumble. The facts speak for themselves. This is the biggest Liberal Democrat parliamentary party in 100 years. You've got Ed Davey, the most popular party leader. Of all the by-elections that happened throughout 2025, Reform came second. Liberal Democrats came first. So whatever the feel some people might have, the facts speak for themselves. The Liberal Democrats are in a very strong position. And I think we have got a responsibility, but it's more than that. I think we have a duty in these troubled times to fill that space and to lead.
I've got a very quick one just to squeeze in, if I may. Chagos. We've seen the Donald Trump tweet.
Yes.
Does the government need to think again on Chagos?
Well, we have real concerns about the proposals, and we've been challenging them in both the Commons and the Lords. But Donald Trump was in favour of all that. This is just all silly nonsense from him because he's feeling aggrieved that people are not rolling over when it comes to Greenland. The problem I have with Keir Starmer is that he's still being too weak when it comes to Donald Trump. Our friends across the channel are being much stronger. They're saying they'd reciprocate with tariffs. We know the way to deal with bullies is not to appease them, it's to stand up to them. Otherwise, you end up being their victims.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Tim Farron speaking to us there. Let's have a quick look at the weather.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
It's going to be an unsettled week, perhaps turning a bit colder later as well. Mostly mild, rather cloudy, frosty. West skies will clear overnight. Many places are dry, but the south of Ireland is going to be pretty wet and rainy. Northern and eastern Britain as well going to have a bit of rain too, and it's going to be windy in the southwest. Ireland, Northern Ireland and southwestern parts of England and Wales should see rain and strong winds moving in this morning. Blustery showers following to the southwest of Ireland, and you can expect some gales on the southwestern and Irish Sea coasts. Elsewhere, northern and eastern Britain will largely dry up, leaving it fine there, and it's going to be mild pretty much everywhere. Later on, though, rain is going to be taking over more of the southwestern UK, and Ireland is going to be seeing persistent rain clearing to blustery showers.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
Well, next up, we're going to be talking about the Winter Olympics and what Britain's medal hopes have. What are our medal hopes? We'll explain. Work it out before we come back.
There's a lot of firing going on.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, sir.
Let's go. Watch, wait, right. We're going to get in. Right. Get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. Next step for them quite often is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Oh my goodness. Whoa, oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera, turn around and go away. Thank you very much. Okay, but listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw 2 guys, 2 bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
But that is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent. Sky News has been given exclusive data. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America. Sky News has found Nazi speeches and marching music have been used as background sound on tens of thousands of TikTok videos. We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Welcome to the world.
Come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? This is the war game.
There were a number of armed security.
We want to discover, to find out what's really going on.
Everything you need to know about British politics in about 20 minutes.
I actually don't like political drama.
So, where next?
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Middle East correspondent. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to. Being a Sky News presenter. Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Rich and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Welcome back. The 2026 Winter Olympics will be the most geographically widespread games in history. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. I'm trying to work out what that means.
Spanning multiple regions and 2 cities. Wow, Milan and Cortina in Italy. There we go. We are joined now by the Chief Executive of GB Snowsport, Victoria Gosling. Victoria, thanks so much for joining us. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. My absolute pleasure.
I didn't read that part of where they were, which I probably did know, but I did read all of the notes that you've shared, and we have more medal hopes. Maybe I should have been more optimistic. More medal hopes than I thought we would have. We're pretty good.
We're doing really well, actually. When you look across all of the different disciplines that we've got, we've got athletes across numerous disciplines who are all effectively, we have podium potential and could win medals for us, which is fantastic.
So just talk us through exactly when everything is really kicking off, and to that point as well, where it's all kicking off.
Yes, so Milan Cortina is where the Olympics are. First time in 12 years where we've actually got it on the same time zone. And so it feels a little bit more like a home-from-home games for us, which is exciting. We've got our freestyle athletes up in Livigno, up in the mountains, which is where you're going to see, Charlotte Banks, Zoe Atkin, Mia Brooks, Kirsty Muir, Michaela Gherkin-Schofield doing our freestyle. And then you've got Bormio is where you've got our alpine athletes with our slalom men, actually, with Billy and Dave Riding in his retirement year and Laurie Taylor. And then we've got our cross-country athletes across in Predazzo. So, it's all to play for, and it's a bit like having a sweet shop, really. We've got such strength and depth this year. We're super excited.
I mean, maybe this is my own sort of ignorance, but I don't always have us pinned as a great Winter Olympics nation. I mean, has that changed recently?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's happened is we've literally... the talent has been there, but we've been growing the talent throughout this period. And actually, I think it's really coming to fruition now. So we've been laser focused on what can we win in, what can we do really well, and what does it take to win. And we focused our time, our effort, and resources into those athletes and into those disciplines. And you're right, though. I mean, I think prior to 2018, when we reconfigured as GB Snowsports, we had, I think, one world champion in 100 years, and we didn't have any crystal globes. But we've now got effectively 10 world champions across Olympics and Paralympics, and we've got 18 crystal globes in the last 6 years. So we're doing okay.
You mentioned, Victoria, some of the sort of snow and ice sport hopes: Matt Weston, skeleton, Zoe Atkin, freestyle skiing, Mia Brooks, snowboarding, David riding, alpine skiing. Where do they have to live and where do they train? I mean, I can't imagine it's in the UK, is it?
Well, actually, so you've got Mia Brooks is from Manchester. You've got Kirsty Muir from Glasgow. So they actually start, and as you've seen with Dave Riding, they actually start in the UK, and they use our facilities in Greystones in Manchester, the Chill Factory. They use the dry slopes up in Scotland. In fact, I went up there to go and see Kirsty, just training, doing a little bit of training. Clearly, it's much more advantageous going out to Europe and using the facilities out there. But the reality is, in this nation, this is where a lot of our athletes actually do start and get the skill sets and the foundation.
And if you are someone who wants to watch the Winter Olympics but doesn't know very much about it, cough, cough, who should we be looking out for? What are like the best spectator sports and things that we've got medal hopes in?
Well, it's really exciting. We've got a documentary coming with TNT Sports, actually, called She Who Dares with Discovery. And that showcases 5 of our incredible athletes, our incredible women. So you've got Mia Brooks, number 1. She's been the number 1 in the world at the age of 16 in snowboarding. You've got Zoe Atkin, current world champion in half pipe, which is super exciting. Charlotte Banks, which is where you get 4 athletes coming out the gate at the same time. Charlotte's also been the world champion and racing against each other. You've got Michaela Gherkin-Schofield, who does the moguls and the bumps, which is great. You'll see the tricks that they do. And Kirsty Muir with the big air in freestyle ski. And, of course, you've got bobsleigh skeleton as well, which is, who doesn't like tuning into that? So, across all of them, and including slalom and cross country, it's going to be a fantastic Winter Olympics for Britain, I hope.
The other sport that is surprisingly good to watch, I remember this from I think I was a student, so it must have been about 20 years ago. Didn't we nail it at the curling about 20 years? And it's really actually captivating.
You get quite into it, yeah.
I think that a lot of people find curling quite addictive. And we definitely medalled. We medalled in Beijing, despite the fact, I mean, it was a really challenging Olympics for ourselves because we didn't have the mountain ranges, and your back gardens aren't quite good enough to train for a slalom or for a big air. But yeah, curling certainly delivered in the last Olympics, and we're hoping that we can demonstrate more strength and depth across all the other disciplines in these Olympics.
Yeah, anyone can practice just sweeping, so it's sort of we can all get better at it. Not downplaying the great talent that is involved with it. Victoria, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. It's great to see you.
We've got a showbiz story for you next, which is kind of unusual for us, but this, I have to say, has been pretty extraordinary. It's really cut through. It is Brooklyn Pounce Beckham, so one of the perhaps most famous famous people in the country. He's broken his silence about his estrangement from his parents, saying he doesn't want to reconcile with his dad, David Beckham, and his mum, Victoria, saying, "I've been silent for years, made every effort to keep these matters private. I do not want to reconcile with my family. I'm not being controlled. I'm standing up for myself for the first time."
Yeah, and this has obviously been bubbling in the background for a while. I think there was the story on this a few weeks ago, as we only speak between our lawyers. Obviously now that's bubbled over the surface. It's I don't know. It's slightly reminiscent, I guess, of the sort of Charles, William, Harry stuff, but dare I say it from afar, seems much more petty. But maybe that's a bit unfair.
It looks pretty, I have to say.
Deep breath in my ears as I said that.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever happens, it doesn't look like it's going to be sorted out at any time soon. This extraordinary Instagram post, David and Victoria approached for comment. So far, haven't said anything.
We'll be right back.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Morning, it is 9 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Rich and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, a very good morning from me as well. Lots ahead.
Britain's opposition leaders back President Trump over plans that he says plans to cede Chagos Island sovereignty to Mauritius is an act of great stupidity.
The US president says it's another reason Greenland needs to be handed to the United States this morning, also accusing Denmark of being unable to protect it.
The government considers introducing a social media ban for under-16s. They want to consult on it.
Also ahead, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is due to speak in Davos later this hour. We'll bring you that speech live.
And there's a new doco in town. It's looking at the dramatic rise of Take That. We're going to talk about a new series revealing some unreleased footage of the boy band.
One of the two show's anchors is more excited about it than the other.
Can you guess which one?
That to come later in the programme. But of course, we start with the news that President Trump has found support for his comments on the Chagos Islands with Britain's opposition leaders. First, let's remind you of the astonishing Truth Social post from Trump that crossed the wires at about 7 a.m, just before the show began. It began with this. Shockingly, our brilliant, in inverted commas, NATO ally, the United Kingdom, is currently planning to give away the island of Diego Garcia, the site of a vital US military base, to Mauritius.
And to do so, in his words, in capitals, for no reason whatsoever. There is no doubt that China and Russia have noticed this act of total weakness. These are international powers who only recognise strength, which is why the United States of America, under my leadership, is now, after only 1 year, respected like never before.
The UK giving away extremely important land is an act of great stupidity, capitalise, and is another in a very long line of national security reasons why Greenland has to be acquired.
Denmark and its European allies have to do the right thing. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump.
Well, it wasn't long before we heard from the leaders of both the Conservatives and Reform. Let's start with what Kemi Badenoch had to say. She posted on social media saying, paying to surrender the Chagos Islands is not just an act of stupidity, but of complete self-sabotage.
She says, I've been clear, and unfortunately on this issue, President Trump is right. Keir Starmer's plan to give away the Chagos Islands is a terrible policy that weakens UK security and hands away our sovereign territory.
And to top it off, makes us and our NATO allies weaker in the face of our enemies. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage tweeted quite quickly, actually, after Donald Trump's post, a short, sweet message saying, thank goodness Trump has vetoed the surrender of the Chagos Islands, of course, implying that it will lead to a change in position from the UK government.
And what this shows, I think, unlike with Greenland, is what a politically difficult issue this is for Keir Starmer. He's at odds, clearly, with the Conservative Party and Reform on that. They want to make political capital. Some of his own MPs also uneasy. This is the argument in the defence. This is the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, Darren Jones, who we interviewed just 5 or 10 minutes after that Truth Social post broke.
We've gone around this quite a lot already. We've secured the islands there as a military base for the next 100 years. We're just about finishing off the legislative process in Parliament to enable that to happen. And I think, as your colleague alluded to, this was a deal that was welcomed at the time by the American administration, but also by European allies and others, given its strategic significance in the world. We were in a tricky spot in that the island was previously part of the British Empire. There were legal challenges to the island and those types of things. And so we needed to find a modern application to protect its military capabilities, which we all rely on, which is what we've done.
Was Darren Jones there earlier on the programme. And this is our US correspondent Mark Stone summarising it all.
Diego Garcia is part of the Chagos Islands, and mid-year last year, the United Kingdom made a controversial decision, but a decision nonetheless, to hand sovereignty of the Chagos Islands back to Mauritius, and that, of course, included Diego Garcia. Now, the reason that the president the reason that America in general over the past year has been exercised about this is because Diego Garcia is a very important, strategically important military base for the United States, as it is for the United Kingdom. But as part of the deal to hand sovereignty back to Mauritius, a 99-year lease was put in place for Diego Garcia precisely so that the Americans and the British would be able still to operate there and effectively to run it for themselves. So that's the first point. But the second point is all this was done and dusted. And mid-year last year, I think it was May last year, it was something the Americans were really worried, the Brits were really worried about. Would the Americans have a problem with the whole issue of Diego Garcia and the Chagos? And mid-year last year, Trump was president, there was no problem. And yet suddenly, and look, the way you read that, and I'm only just reading it now as we speak as well, the sort of vibe and the tone of Trump's statement, which was, 15 minutes ago he released this, almost is as if he's only just discovered that this is happening. It's extraordinary. But look, Sophie, Wilf, the broader point is that, I was saying a day ago that it feels as though the wheels are truly coming off the transatlantic alliance, whether that be with the UK or with the European Union. But for the UK, the special relationship, I mean, it's in a really bad way right now. And remember that Keir Starmer, he's worked so hard and has had some success, no question, trying to be the Trump whisperer, trying to be the guy who is able to be almost the bridge from Europe to America under Trump, to try and work out what on earth is going on. Right now, that feels like a very tricky place that Keir Starmer is in.
Well, that was Mark Stone with the sort of US perspective.
Got there.
I didn't
get there.
Gosh, Alex, take it away. No, what is the UK perspective in terms of the extent to which this is a very tricky issue for the Prime Minister to now deal with?
So it's got a lot of opposition from the Prime Minister's opponents, the Tories, the Reform, for instance. They think this is an act of surrender, an act of stupidity, echoing Donald Trump. His Labour MPs broadly seem to be on side at the moment, but I guess the question is whether bringing it into the spotlight like this might kind of tip the balance against the Prime Minister. We know that the government's been defeated in the Lords on this about 4 times, and it is, coincidentally, the bill is back in the Commons today. So he was probably hoping that maybe there'd be a little bit of drama from the opposition benches, but now there's really a spotlight on it that he probably wasn't expecting.
The spotlight could get brighter as well. I mean, this is all guesswork, but Nigel Farage, I'm sure, would not be going to Davos because it's not the type of thing that the anti-establishment politician would be doing unless he knows he's going to have time with President Trump. So they are going to talk about this together. They'll be on camera together. And it's just going to make this so hard these next couple of days for the Prime Minister, who's not going to Davos.
It's just another issue for him to worry about. He was probably all consumed by Greenland and whether his approach to Trump on that was too soft and now he's having to turn his attention elsewhere. So, yeah.
I mean, it's hard not to have a bit of sympathy, isn't it? Because, look, I mean, the US did, it should be said,
totally
sign it off. They agreed to it. I mean, back in May, Marco Rubio welcomed it. He said it secured the long-term, stable and effective operation of the military base at Diego Garcia. I mean, I guess it just shows how difficult it is to deal with this particular president.
I think the government probably imagines that this is just President Trump trying to exert more pressure and bring us into line, because we have been trying to walk a tightrope between the US and Europe, and that's clearly not gone down well with Donald Trump. He wants us to take a firmer stance on it.
On the topic of Greenland, let's just listen in to the Danish economy minister who's speaking in Brussels earlier.
We don't rule out anything at the moment, but it's what's most important for us, besides from seeking the dialogue with the United States and trying to prevent escalation, will be to have a very close contact with all our European friends and our allies to see if we can find a common way forward from here. We will, of course, be discussing the anti-cohesion instrument, but also the countermeasures that will be put into place on February 6th if no one does anything. So all options are on the table.
Interesting, different tone from the Danish economist. You might expect that to the Prime Minister yesterday, but any hints that the Prime Minister's going to change his sort of softly approach to the US President?
I think it's unlikely. He was very keen to try and de-escalate the row yesterday and sort of took retaliatory tariffs off the table, although the UK public seemed more in favour of that. So he may come under pressure domestically to take a more forceful stance. But really, the way that the UK has operated with the US has been a softly approach, as you say, calm discussions behind the scenes. And I imagine that is the way that they're going to pursue this.
Alex, thank you very much indeed. Alex Rogers speaking to us there.
Now, the government is considering adopting an Australia-style ban on social media for children under the age of 16.
So they're launching a consultation. It's just considering all the different options to better protect children online. So looking in particular at things like infinite scrolling, doom scrolling, algorithms, all that kind of thing. And I think it's fair to say that the main takeaway is that they've moved on this. They've toughened up their position. We can talk now to our education reporter, Anjum Pierbackers. And I guess this comes after mounting pressure from parents, from other parties like the Conservatives, but also quite a lot of Labour MPs as well.
No, absolutely. And I think there's been a general consensus, which is why this consultation has kind of been rolled out and announced. And they want to be able to get the voices of, you know, a plethora of people in different sectors who are involved in young people and seeing the impact of social media on young people. And we know currently that schools are sort of very much at the heart of this issue, but we also know that 90% of secondary schools already have a no phones policy in place, and 99% of primary schools have a no phones policy. So it's not really the schools that are being responsible for this kind of doom scrolling or the algorithm that's in place that young people are exposed to. And I think this is why the social media ban will play such an important role if it comes into play, given that what we've seen in Australia, and I think there has been mounting pressure, not just from the education sector, but from parents and campaigners and MPs who are now, you know, they're tabling an amendment to the Children and Wellbeing School Bill, which will be debated tomorrow in the House of Lords. And there is a lot of pressure to kind of move forward on this. And some people are saying that actually the consultation isn't enough. They're saying it's more of a delaying tactic rather than taking affirmative action. But the fact that the conversation is happening, the fact that they were moving in a direction where we're looking at this and scrutinising the issues in quite a lot of detail is definitely a positive step in the right direction.
Andrew, great stuff. Thank you so much. Andrew Pierbackers there. Now, at least 40 people have been killed after two high-speed trains derailed in southern Spain on Sunday. A high-speed train operator in Spain said that its 6189 service was travelling between Malaga and Madrid with around 300 people on board when it derailed. The Spanish king, Felipe, is expected to visit the accident site today.
Well, we can talk now to our Europe correspondent, Alistair Bunkle, who's live in Cordoba for us. Ali, I guess there's going to be an awful lot of investigations, a lot of questions about how this happened.
Yeah, so multiple investigations have been launched, including a criminal investigation. That is procedure. That doesn't necessarily mean that there was any criminal wrongdoing, but they need to work out how on earth this happened. It happened on a straight piece of track, and at the moment authorities seem totally baffled as to why the first train derailed, which then resulted in the second train coming the opposite direction, ploughing straight into it. So that will be for the investigation to determine. The Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez visited the site yesterday, and he told the Spanish people that they would get answers to that. There had been, we understand, complaints from train unions and from some Spanish politicians about the safety of that track, but it had also undergone a recent, very expensive upgrade. So all those questions need to be answered, and they'll look at trains that had passed on that stretch of track over the hours and the days beforehand to see whether or not there was something wrong with the railway lines. In terms of sort of where we are this morning, 41 people have now been confirmed dead, but authorities have told us that they have also identified 43 missing people. So the expectation, and they've always said this, the expectation is that the death toll is still going to rise further, and I think there might be an updated figure once, and this is something they're doing this morning, they're starting to get two big cranes to lift at least one of the carriages up from the tracks, and they feel that they might find more bodies under that.
Ali, thank you very much indeed. Alistair Bunkle reporting there on the impact on the aftermath of that appalling crash.
Now, a mother living next to 25,000 tonnes of illegal waste in Wigan has told Sky News her house has become a prison, with the situation tearing her family apart.
So Sky first visited the sites in Bickershaw last year, and after months of complaints for residents, there's still been no sign of any clean-up beginning, and it's led to some people saying that this wouldn't happen in the south. So there's a north-south divide. Millions of pounds were set aside to clear a similar-sized tip in Oxfordshire. Dan Whitehead's been investigating.
Just before Christmas, we started hearing scurrying, and we ended up with rats. As you can smell, we still have evidence of rats.
Venetia and her family, the 25,000 tonnes of rotting waste just metres from her house, has become a living nightmare.
We could see rats just running along our fences, running down the street on the front. They were just everywhere.
As well as rats, maggots and flies, the impact of this illegal waste dump has ripped her family in two.
Even to this day, 17 months on, the smell's make him physically sick. So he now only spends 1 or 2 nights a week at my house.
So one of your children has had to move out because of this?
Yes, move in with his mother, with my mother-in-law. It's teared our family apart, and it puts stress on the family as well. Obviously our mental health isn't great. It's like being separated parents, even though me and my partner together, we're sharing the child with the grandparents. Because I can't keep saying, oh, soon it'll be cleared up, soon it'll be cleared up, because it isn't. And I don't know what else to tell my child why he has to live in this prison, because it's like prison.
Whilst Nisha feels trapped, there is a different story 200 miles south. Sky footage of a similar-sized tip in Kidlington in Oxfordshire made headlines just before Christmas. But 2 weeks ago, a £9 million tender to clear up the waste was issued, with the work set to potentially begin next month. We're told that the site down in Kidlington is being cleared because of a serious fire risk, which could impact a major A road and power supplies. But here in Wigan, a 9-day fire here last summer was declared a major incident. Despite that, the impact on the local residents and the school that backs onto the dump, there is no multi-million-pound tender to remove this waste. In a statement, the Environment Agency told Sky News new information has come to light about the rapidly escalating fire risks at the Kidlington site, with potential to close the A34 major highway and impact key electrical supplies, which has meant we have taken the exceptional decision to clear the site as soon as possible. This does not undermine the real impacts to the local community in Wigan. We are doing everything within our power to ensure that the perpetrators pay the price to clean up the site, rather than taxpayers. But at the moment, there is no clean-up. How does that make you feel that down in Oxfordshire, within weeks, there's millions available, and what are we on here, a year and a half?
Yeah, 17 months exactly.
How does that make you feel?
Like they don't care. No one cares what up here in North, they're not bothered.
Dan Whitehead, Sky News, in Wigan.
Dan, able to join us now from Wigan. Dan, good morning to you. I'm really interested there. So when does it change from being an issue that's purely down to the local council to sort to being something that the nationwide environmental agency gets involved in? What triggers it to cross that line?
Well, when the fire happened here, Wilf, back in the last summer, the fire brigade had to move around 4,000 tonnes of the rubbish onto a nature reserve, onto public land, to separate it, to try and stop the fire. Now, that public land and that nature reserve came under Wigan Council, so they've just put out a tender for around £900,000 to clear that. That's the council's responsibility. When it comes to breaches of the law and private land like this is, then that comes under the criminal jurisdiction of the Environment Agency, and there is a criminal investigation underway by the Environment Agency. It's very complicated, and every site like these, there are hundreds up and down the country, are very different, and finding out who owns the land, finding out who is responsible for dumping this waste is a complex investigation which takes a long time. We were just chatting about the smell, and we were chatting to the residents yesterday. I mean, if we just take a closer look just at the amount of rubbish. Now, even from here, the gates are closed, obviously, because of this closure order. You can feel the sort of and smell the rotting waste under there. It is, you know, several stories high, 25,000 tonnes, and that is what has led to the rats going into Nisha's house and the other properties here. So it's a really horrible environment, which gets much worse throughout the summer as the heat comes, of course. Many of us looking forward to warmer weather, not the residents of Bolton House Road. They do not want that to come because that brings more vermin, more wildlife, and the stench increases. This is not just a problem, look here in Wigan. It's thought that around a fifth of waste is processed and dumped illegally, around 38 million tonnes across England. So this is a nationwide problem that is getting worse. When it comes to the north-south divide, you know, is that true? You speak to the residents here and they certainly feel it is. And when you look at the justification from the Environment Agency as to why they were given that money from the government, millions and millions of pounds to clear up Kidlington because of a fire and the fire risk. And when you had a major incident declared here because of a fire which caused the school to close for 2 or 3 days, the kids couldn't go out on the playground, the residents have seen their houses completely devalued. You do wonder why on earth that money hasn't been made available for a site here in the north. The local MP took the Environment Agency's task on X just before Christmas, saying that the EA is prioritising middle-class areas over working-class towns. And there's some thought that look, the land itself is worth less than it would cost to clear it up. Is that a justification? The Environment Agency would say it's not. They say they are working with law enforcement to catch the people responsible for this and to make them pay rather than the taxpayer. At the moment, though, as I say, no sign of a clear-up.
Dan, thanks so much. Really, really interesting. Dan Whitehead there outside Wigan.
Coming up, we are going to be talking more about the fallout from that extraordinary social media post from Donald Trump, where he's talking about the signing away of the Chagos Islands by the UK as an act of great stupidity, getting some reaction from the opposition.
There's a fresh look to your news from 10 on Sky News.
It's a new show called The Wrap, every night of the week.
We'll still bring you the day's biggest stories,
but with more lively debate,
more in-depth commentary,
and more of what you need to know.
Plus a look at what's making tomorrow's headlines.
The Wrap.
Everything wrapped up for you from 10 on Sky News.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
being a Sky News journalist?
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us?
Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office.
Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Well, it's another morning of some pretty dramatic breaking news on the international stage. We're joined by the Shadow Business and Trade Secretary, Andrew Griffith, who joins us now. Thanks for being with us. I've got to get your reaction to Donald Trump's comments on the Chagos Islands. He said that signing away sovereignty to Mauritius by the UK was an act of great stupidity, another in a very long list of national security reasons why Greenland has to be acquired. What's your reaction to what he's had to say?
Well, I don't agree with the linkage to Greenland, but it's true, and we've taught ourselves this throughout history, that peace comes through strength. And it doesn't show strength to be listening to some international North London lawyers and giving away British sovereign territory. It's been opposed by the Conservatives right from the beginning. It's got some very unique assets in terms of global security, parts of the sky, parts of the radio spectrum, physicality, that can't be replicated anywhere else on the planet. And the idea that we were going to pay Mauritius, which has never run this island, over the wishes of the Chagossians, £35 billion of taxpayers' money, complete nuts, complete self-sabotage. And on this one point, he is right.
You see, this is it. You're careful there to say you don't agree with what he said on Greenland. I mean, is there a risk there that, you're dancing to his tune? He's basically just trying to justify his threats against Greenland.
Look, I've used my words. I mean, this is about, in this particular case, the Chagos Islands, and this is a long-standing Conservative position. We've opposed every single aspect of the deal, from the damage it'll be caused by fishing out a marine protected area, Mauritius's proximity with the Chinese, who are not an ally, and simply the fact that this is going to damage British interests in the world. The way we've got leverage with the United States, the special relationship, which I firmly believe in, is through bringing to the party our assets in places like the world, like the Chagos Islands. We give those away, we've got less equities, less chance of having our voice heard with the Americans.
But the US agreed to this. They kind of signed it off, right? Marco Rubio, back in May, said the US welcomes this historic agreement. It secures the long-term, stable and effective operation of that military base. So, Donald Trump's just changed his mind.
Yeah, look, I thought Marco Rubio was wrong then, and in this particular case, Donald Trump is right. And the position, as you will know, of the Conservatives on this deal, from the very moment we heard the horror show that this government, David Lammy, had negotiated, was to oppose this deal, oppose the transfer. And the one linkage is that the wider world is now standing up rightly for the self-determination rights of the people of Greenland. Well, why shouldn't the Chagossians have those rights?
Can I ask you a bit more widely about how on earth we should deal with Donald Trump, right? Because we heard from Keir Starmer there yesterday, trying to thread a bit of a diplomatic needle. He's obviously worried about some of the economic impact of these tariffs. He talked about the importance of trade and investment. With your kind of business hat on, would you give the Prime Minister a bit of credit for trying to keep Donald Trump on side for the good of the UK economy?
Yeah, when the Prime Minister does something right, we're all too happy to support him. It's, in fact, sadly very rare, but when he U-turns and gets to our position,
you can't help yourself. I thought you were going to start off saying something, magnanimous.
On this, well, I said the Prime Minister's right. It's right to separate the economic track, the damage that will be caused both to American citizens, British exporters and the cost of living in the UK if you got into a tit-for-tat tariff war. So it's right that we're not part of any European retaliation exercise, and it's right that we try and keep that separate. In terms of how you try and influence the US, the world's greatest economic and military superpower, it is by coming to that conversation with the intelligence sharing that we've done, the very close linkage between our militaries, and the assets that we can offer around the world in precisely places like British Indian Ocean territories. So I think it's right to separate those two tracks. That is the Prime Minister's view, and we Conservatives support that. But then you've got to bring things to bear, and if we make ourselves look weak, then clearly we're not going to have as much weight in those conversations as we might want.
Can I just ask you about the defections that we've seen from the Conservatives to reform. Obviously, Robert Jenrick, the most high profile. Are you in the kind of Kemi Badenoch camp where this is great, Reform are doing her spring cleaning, or you're actually someone who feels, I guess, a bit of sorrow when you see colleagues jump ship?
When you said defection, Sophie, I thought you were going to ask about the defections of a Buckinghamshire councillor from Reform to the Conservatives, which has given the Conservatives back control of Buckinghamshire County Council, which will allow us to deliver good services to local residents there. Look, more widely, I certainly came into this postcode politics after business because I want to help fix things. And I think Kemi Badenoch's approach of laying out often challenges in honest truths that haven't been told for too long, and then building a team that are purposefully trying to put in place plans to fix those, as I am for small businesses who are bleeding out across the country. Yesterday it was the Conservatives holding the government to account over business rates, which all of those small businesses that are viewing right now.
So are you happy about the spring cleaning, or are you sorrowful to leave?
Look, I'm happy when teams work well as a team, and ultimately, if people aren't willing to purposefully work as a team, you know, this is a competitive domain. There's other parties available, but we, the Conservatives, want to work well as a team, and I think we are, and I think Kemi's leadership was very strong on this issue.
OK, thanks very much indeed. Andrew Griffiths from the Conservative Party. Coming up, Wilfred is going to be talking to a former NATO Secretary-General and a former Danish Prime Minister, Anders Fogh Rasmussen. Definitely worth sticking around to watch that one.
Welcome back. World leaders, of course, gathering in Davos today. It's the first full day of the World Economic Forum there. could hardly imagine there being more to discuss. We're joined now by Anders Fogh Rasmussen, who is a former NATO General Secretary and a former Danish Prime Minister. Few better people to talk to about all of the goings-on at the moment. First up, how shocked have you been by the last couple of weeks of rhetoric from the US President towards Greenland?
I have been both shocked and in pain with what I'm seeing. Since childhood, I've admired the United States as Prime Minister and Secretary General of NATO. I always saw the United States as a natural leader of the free world. And now I see the United States breaking up with that world order. And we have to draw new conclusions in Europe based on that.
Do you think he's going to back down? I mean, this has been weeks now, and the temperature just keeps going up.
Yeah, I'm not sure he will back down. I think we should take him seriously and present proposals, concrete proposals that accommodate the legitimate concerns of the United States, including security in the Arctic. If he doesn't accept those proposals, then we can call his bluff.
What should the EU and the UK be doing immediately in the short term? I mean, the UK's taken a conciliatory approach. They're maintaining that approach even after an attack from the president towards the Chagos Island deal this morning. The EU, it feels like, is preparing a more firm response, but we haven't seen it yet.
I think time for flattering has ended. So far, Europe has achieved a lot by trying to accommodate positions of President Trump, but he continues in a very aggressive way towards Europe. So I think time has come now to stand up against Trump. Trump and Putin and Xi Jinping from China, they only respect one thing: force, strength and a firm position, and that's why my advice would be that the European Union takes strong and determined action if Trump carries out his threat to impose special new tariffs on 8 European countries.
It's interesting you said that those countries only respect strength. That's obviously rhetoric of Donald Trump's as well. Has Europe and the rest of NATO, excluding the US, been too weak?
Well, I think so far it has served us well. We had a very successful NATO summit in The Hague last year, and Trump left the NATO summit happy, and he expressed a lot of support for NATO. So he served us well. But now he returns to his very aggressive rhetoric. And I think we have to conclude, well, now time has come to stand up against Trump. For instance, I think we should introduce very strong retaliatory measures and impose new tariffs on the United States if Trump carries out his threat to impose new tariffs, including on the UK.
I'm really interested in what your view is of the future of NATO. I mean, many people have said if Trump crossed into Greenland using military force, that would be the end of NATO. Is it already the end of NATO?
Yes, it is actually the end of NATO as a collective defense organization. If the biggest ally attacks another ally with the aim to take territory from that ally, obviously it doesn't make sense to have a collective security organization if allies are attacking each other. So an American attack against Greenland would de facto mean the end of NATO. And also in that respect, we have to draw new conclusions in Europe. So I think Europe should do more to be able to defend itself. In that case, we would need what I would call a European NATO, a coalition of the willing, capable, and willing to do what is necessary to defend Europe.
When you look across European leaders, do you think they've woken up sufficiently to that yet?
I think it's too hesitant, too reluctantly. The coalition of the willing has become a coalition of the waiting. But I appreciate very much the combined French and British efforts to try to create this coalition of the willing. But we need a more determined action. We need more and stronger commitment to deploying troops in Ukraine to guarantee security of Ukraine in the future. And actually, speaking about Greenland, it is a tragedy that the dispute on Greenland now overshadows the real threat from Russia in Ukraine. And I think Trump has used Greenland as a weapon of mass distraction, not destruction, but distraction from the real problem that is Russia's war against Ukraine.
Anders, thank you so much for joining us. A really interesting and important conversation, Anders, for Rasmussen, the former NATO General Secretary and the former Danish Prime Minister. Let's just pivot and dip into this address briefly by the US Speaker, Mike Johnson, to Parliament. Could not really be of a more awkward setup for this.
Are truly touched by how warmly we've been received here, and having met so many of you in the past couple of days, we walked away with this sense that we do have close and dear friends here across the pond, and we have this shared heritage, and we treasure that. It is a profound honor to be speaking in Parliament today, to be the first U.S. Speaker of the House ever given this honor, and I take it very seriously. As proud Americans, it is as though we have returned to the spiritual birthplace of our own nation. And the history here, the weight of it is palpable, as you know. It gives you a certain sense of just being serious. I was going to roll on with a bunch of jokes this morning, but it doesn't feel right to be in this place at this time. We have returned at a pivotal moment, obviously, in the great histories of our countries, to mark this anniversary that we have in our nation and to celebrate what we've achieved together in the past, and importantly, to face and overcome together the challenges of our present day. And I want to tell you, my friends, we will do that together. That's what I bring you that message. When I met with Prime Minister Starmer at Downing Street yesterday, I told him that I thought his national address a few hours earlier was well done. He noted, of course, that the UK and the US are close allies and that our strong, constructive partnership all these years has been built on mutual respect and focused on results. I thought that was exactly the right message and the right tone. And because of that, we've always been able to work through our differences calmly as friends, and we will continue to do that. I want to assure you this morning that that is still the case. I spoke to President Trump at length yesterday, and I told him that I really felt that my mission here, even though we planned this back in the fall, we didn't know how the events would develop over the last few days. But I told the President that I felt that my mission here today was to encourage our friends and help to calm the waters, so to speak, and I hope to do so. As the Prime Minister said yesterday, let us look to agreement, continue our dialogue, and find a resolution, just as we always have in the past. And in that process, I am confident that we can and will maintain and strengthen our special relationship between these two nations, send a message of unity and resolve to our allies around the world, and remind our adversaries and the terrorists and tyrants everywhere that our nations that are dedicated to freedom and justice and order and human dignity are stronger and more resolved now than ever before. I think it's a very important message. Of course, we do gather here at a unique and consequential moment in American history. This year, as noted, is the time we mark our 250th anniversary of our independence. Now, I know this is not a long span of time in the scale of human history. I get that. We were touring the 1,000-year-old Windsor Palace a day or so ago, and that really set it into reality for us. At the dinner we had here last night, that Speaker Hoyle and Lady Catherine graciously hosted for us, it was not lost on me that there at my table were items of silverware older than my country. Puts it in perspective. But this year in particular, we remember just how far we really have come, how our nations have evolved and grown and strengthened in so many ways together. America's founders embarked on what was a radical experiment, of course, a government of, by, and for the people, ruled by laws and based on the self-evident truth that all men are created equal and free. That experiment transformed 13 disparate, distant colonies from the world's largest empire into what became the world's freest and most successful self-government in human history. For Americans, this year is not simply a celebration, it is an invitation to come together and to ask what we are doing in our own time to preserve and fortify that experiment and all of the blessings of liberty and opportunity and security that we enjoy today, and frankly, sometimes too often take for granted. We have a stewardship obligation to maintain these blessings, and all of us in the West, all of us together, are facing real challenges today that we must acknowledge and confront, and we do that best together. Across the pond, Congress and the Trump administration have been working very hard. We're trying to usher in a new golden age for our country, as we say. We're marshaling every resource we have to make America safer and stronger and more prosperous than ever before. And I'm very bullish on the prospects of doing that. We must do this because we know those hostile to the West and to our shared values are engaging in increasingly sophisticated forms of subversion and espionage. We see China, Russia, and Iran grow more aggressive and emboldened as they intensify their efforts to exert economic, political, and military influence around the world. We see a callous disregard for basic human rights, new provocations, and even the theft of intellectual property on a scale like we have never seen before. Clearly, President Trump is taking seriously the modern and dynamic threats that China and Russia pose to our global security, especially in focus the last few days as it relates to the Arctic. And while we can have thoughtful debate among our friends about how best to counter these threats, we all certainly agree they must be countered. We ignore these threats at our peril. And I want to hasten to express our gratitude to the UK and to all of you for joining us in some of our most recent actions to deter these hostile regimes, including the recent seizure of a black market vessel seeking to circumvent oil sanctions. That was a big help to us. That kind of open dialogue and partnership is a great example of how we can work together to ensure our collective defense around the world. It is an objective and obvious truth that a strong America is good for the entire world, and a strong UK is as well. At the same time, it's also obvious that we have to take care of our own houses, so to speak, before we take care of the neighborhood. And let's be honest, among friends here, in both of our nations, there is a need today to fortify our houses against internal challenges as well. In the West, if we make an honest assessment, we must acknowledge that our long-term prosperity and security are currently being undermined by, let's call it a crisis of self-doubt. It's been developing now for years. Elite institutions today tell the young and impressionable that our story is one of oppression and hypocrisy and failure. Our brightest minds are too often taught to view our history only through the lens of its sins. And we see the work of international organizations and transnational bodies hinder the very spirit of creativity and industriousness and daring that our nations were built upon. We have faced this in America just as you have here, a truly menacing skepticism towards history and our national institutions. And it's even come to the point where even great heroes like Sir Winston Churchill are questioned for their legacy. What has taken hold is a mindset that defines itself not by what it loves and seeks to preserve, but instead by what it condemns and seeks to tear down. And this growing disaffection we see, particularly among our younger citizens, is a serious threat to the health of both our nations. If the next generation is never exposed to the deeper wisdom of the Western world, or the enduring tradition of the British Parliament, or the genius of America's model of Republican self-government, then why would they feel any obligation to defend or preserve them? Fortunately, history teaches us an important lesson. Just over half a century after American independence, our country faced a moment of reckoning. It was 1838, and for the first time in our short history, America's founding fathers, the men who had led us through the turbulent years of our young nation, were no longer there to guide us. A growing disregard for the rule of law had taken hold at that time, and the cries of mob rule threatened every part of our country. A young legislator at that time, concerned by what he saw as America's deteriorating regard for its past, charged his countrymen with an important choice. Would they uphold their duty and preserve the blessings for which their fathers pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor? Or would they continue on the path of decline and self-destruction? The answer was simple, he said. This experiment in liberty could not survive unless the principles enshrined in the Declaration and institutionalized in our Constitution became their shared civic faith. That rising statement, he was just 28 years old at the time, would one day become president, and he would be called to confront the greatest stress test of the American experiment yet. His likeness stands just a few feet away from here, where we're gathered today, watching over Parliament Square. Abraham Lincoln, of course, wisely understood that the philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation is the philosophy of government in the next. He knew that our national renewal would not come from repudiating our past, but rather from renewing and recommitting to our best principles, to appealing to the better angels of our nature. The struggle of Lincoln's time shows us that though America may be 250 years old, the question of how best to steward this grand experiment has always been with us. And age-old questions require age-old wisdom. In the West today, we see faith in our foundations and our shared inheritance weakening. And what we have to do is channel the wisdom of our predecessors to chart our own renewal. So what does renewal require? Just a few things. Well, first, it requires remembrance. This is a biblical admonition, in fact. We're to remember our blessings and from where we came. And the great British philosopher G.K. Chesterton warned, every high civilization decays by forgetting obvious things. Things like the dignity of the individual, the stabilizing role of the family, the human yearning for meaning and purpose, and the indispensable relationship between freedom and virtue. In short, we have to remember our foundations, and we have to describe what they are, because the generation behind us seems not to understand this. As Chesterton observed, America was founded on a creed that was set forth, he said, with dogmatic and theological lucidity in the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That profound acknowledgement of obvious and undeniable truth shook the foundations of Western democracy, and with it, the course of human history. Our founders recognized that all of us are made in the image of God, and because of that, every single person has inestimable dignity and value. And our value is not related in any way to the color of our skin or what town or village we hail from, what our talents are, etc. Our value is inherent because it is given to us by our Creator. We built an entire nation upon that premise. And just as our citizens are endowed with God-given and unalienable rights, all nations and all people should adhere to the obvious laws of nature and of nature's God, as our documents say. In his farewell address, the father of our country, George Washington, gave all of his advice that echoes down through his countrymen, even today, and echoes down through the generations in reminding us how we would keep this republic, how we would keep this grand experiment in self-government. And he said famously, of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. And John Adams was our second president, and he said famously, our Constitution is made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. The late Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher put it even more simply. Freedom, she said, will destroy itself if it has no purpose. Lady Thatcher, just like our founders, understood that free societies that lacked a shared moral and civic foundation inevitably turn elsewhere to compensate. And that reminds us of another important lesson from history. A healthy renewal requires the participation and stewardship of each successive generation. Here, too, the example of the American Revolution proves so instructive. Our founders didn't seek to build a new nation on pure abstraction or mere ideology, nor did they abandon the brilliance of the British tradition, even if they opposed the empire itself. Instead, they drew on the joint inheritance of the English-speaking world, an inheritance rooted in the wisdom of classical thinkers, asserted in the Magna Carta, embraced in common law in the writings of John Locke, and articulated in the Bill of Rights of 1689. These principles found, in the words of Sir Winston Churchill, their most famous expression in the American Declaration of Independence. For Americans, our independence is not a rebuke of our British roots, but rather a renewal of what is best, the best of what Britain had to offer the world. If renewal requires remembrance and stewardship, it also requires responsible citizens. Strong institutions are essential, of course, but when people are taught that their lives are determined by systems and structures, responsibility quickly disappears, and with it, their purpose and their meaning. In both of our nations, we have too many people today on the sidelines, particularly younger generations. We should want our citizens involved, gainfully employed, and contributing to their communities, of course. Stable and thriving societies need families that raise children. They need churches and communities that form character, and patriotic men and women dedicated to leaving their country better than they found it. The simple truth is that freedom cannot survive if we outsource our responsibility as citizens. And this is a fact that remains true at a national level. We cannot fail in our responsibility to protect our people and their security. Amongst our allies, we see the UK and Europe stepping up as faithful partners here, and I want to declare that today. Whether it's NATO's nation's historic commitment to raise their investment in defense, which we applaud, or the AUKUS alliance deepening its cooperation in submarines and undersea defense, our partnership is proving that nations can prioritize their individual interests responsibly and at the same time make strides towards strengthening alliances and preserving the freedom and sovereignty of our nation states. And our current U.S. ambassador to the UK, Warren Stevens, who sits here up here with me today, said it recently very well. He said, "America first does not mean and will never mean America alone." Finally, renewal takes courage. From the defeat of Napoleon to the heroic resistance to the Blitz, to the bravery of our soldiers in the liberation of Western Europe, the British people have given the world some of the greatest demonstrations of courage in human history. You are the heirs of Burke and Locke and Smith, the home of Shakespeare, the cradle of free speech. You are the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution and the nation that helped end the slave trade. And from these shores, you set sail to pioneer a new world built on British custom, British fortitude, and British law. Together, we, all of us, are the legacy of those ancient ancestors who came before us. Their courage is part of who we are, and we do well to remember that. Today, it takes our courage, clarity, and conviction to defend truth, just as our ancestors did. And it means being able to say that some things are true and good and enduring, and others are not. And to call evil and madness what it is. It means repairing what we see in clear disrepair, from restoring, for example, secure borders that protect from the real and measurable harms of mass uncontrolled migration, to pushing back on policies that erode our citizens' most basic liberties, especially the fundamental freedoms of speech and conscience. History teaches us we can never go down the road of censoring and silencing unpopular opinions because liberty is kept alive in the free marketplace of ideas. History further teaches us that the best solution to the problem of free speech is always more speech. And those being unjustly persecuted for exercising those freedoms, such as Jimmy Lai, the British national being held in Hong Kong, must be defended. And the U.S. stands with the UK as you work to free him. As we chart our renewal, America has no intention of walking alone. In fact, to do so would be self-defeating. More than ever before, we need the British people to be great and proud and patriotic, and you are. To work in close concert with us as partners and friends, and to defend the security of the Western world. That means secure borders. It means, obviously, serious investments in our shared defense and maintaining strategic strongholds around the world. And we will figure this out together. But again, the surest way that we protect this special relationship long-term is by renewing and recommitting to our foundational principles. As Churchill taught us, the strongest alliances are between kindred countries of kindred principles. What has always set us apart from the rest of the world, our commitment to liberty, our pursuit of excellence, our desire to put faith and family at the center of our lives, these are things that distinguish the free world from regimes that trample on the most basic principles of democracy and human dignity. While the West is not without its flaws, our greatest strength has always been our faith in human progress and our capacity for self-correction. Strong and lethal militaries matter, robust and thriving economies matter, but they mean little if we forget what we're fighting for. Churchill understood that the fate of the West would ultimately be decided not on the battlefield, but in the hearts and minds and souls of its people. And Ronald Reagan saw this a generation later. When he came to Parliament at the height of the Cold War, the first U.S. president ever to do so, his message was clear. He said the free world would prevail against the scourge of communism only if it recovered its confidence and resolve in itself. And today, I believe we stand at a similar moment. Together, our strength is real, and the fate of the free world rests on our will to defend and preserve it. Today, ultimately, our renewal depends on whether we, as leaders and citizens, equip the next generation, whether we arm them with the confidence to articulate the ideals of the West and the will to defend them, not to shrink into national reluctance, but to stand strong in national pride. Because our countries really do have an unparalleled heritage of achieving good and advancing mankind, both individually and in this trusted partnership. Thankfully, our special relationship has always proven much more powerful and enduring than the enemies we face. Together, we represent a common history and heritage, and the greatest, most free, most prosperous, most successful, and benevolent civilization the world has ever known. And it will endure only as long as we reject, decline, and recommit to our foundations. I'll leave you with the thought of Ronald Reagan one more. He said, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on. And just like all things, great civilizations don't defy the laws of gravity. They rise and fall with the individual actions of each individual generation. So today, my friends, we have great reason for hope. Today, I see the UK with renewed sovereignty and self-determination. I see our European allies with an advantage over our adversaries in economic power, and most importantly, in spirit. I see younger generations rejecting the indulgence of self-interest and embracing pursuits of greater importance and higher purpose. And I see those who cherish the lessons of Churchill and Lincoln, who are ready to offer this age heroes of their own. With the right choices and the right leadership, we can chart our renewal, and we can seize the great moment together if we truly seek it and fight for it. Thank you again for this profound honor. God bless you all. God bless the United Kingdom, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mike Johnson there, speaking to parliamentarians in Westminster. Earlier this morning, he said he'd spoken to President Trump at length yesterday and told the president that he felt his mission was to encourage our friends and to help calm the waters. I hope, so to speak, that in the process I'm confident that we can and will maintain and strengthen our special relationship between the two nations, sending a message of unity. And that message of unity, that special relationship, strained more so than ever in recent days, especially this morning. The president taking to Truth Social decrying the United Kingdom's decision to hand sovereignty of Diego Garcia and the Chagos Islands over to Mauritius. So there has been criticism on Truth Social by the President, but Mike Johnson talking of the United Kingdom and European Union. Let's just listen to some of the reciprocal words being expressed to the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Signing of the US Declaration of Independence causes us to reflect on how our relationship has changed and indeed improved since the 4th of July 1776. With our two countries' relationship, whilst it began in conflict, over time we have rebuilt trust and developed one of the world's closest and most enduring partnerships. The special relationship we know and celebrate today is based on our shared values of democracy and the rule of law, and built on defence and security cooperation. Our bond was strengthened when indeed we did stand shoulder to shoulder throughout two world wars, the Cold War, and fought together to combat terrorism. Our transatlantic alliance has kept the free world safe for generations, and we applaud the United States for its commitment to peace. I commend American efforts to maintain the ceasefire and work towards a lasting peace in the Middle East and to end the illegal invasion of Ukraine. Our economic, trade and cultural ties run just as deep. Your visit is an opportunity to celebrate our parliamentary links as we remind the world of the critical importance of democracy and the rule of law. The warmth of the UK-US relationship is of great importance to all our members, and our engagement with the United States is of the highest concern to members of both Houses of Parliament. The House of Lords International Relations and Defence Committee is currently undertaking an inquiry into our future relationship with the United States. They are sorry not to see you here today because they are in the US right now. Maybe you will bump into them when you get back. And we have the British-American Parliamentary Group, which forges valuable ties between our two legislators, in which I was an active member in the past. And through that, I gained many insights from my visits to the United States and meetings with your colleagues. It is as much a pleasure to hear the lyrical accent of Louisiana in this place as it was surprising to senators and congressmen to hear the dour Scottish tones of my hometown, Dumbarton. But the name Dumbarton, however, may not be unfamiliar to those who work in Washington, D.C. One of the legacies of my hometown in the US capital is Dumbarton.
From Westminster to the Royal Courts of Justice, Prince Harry arriving for the second day of the court proceedings in his case against Associated Newspapers Limited. Alongside him is also amongst the claimants Sir Elton John, David Furnish, Liz Hurley, several other high-profile figures. This is Harry arriving in court for the second day. We expect him to give evidence tomorrow. He's given evidence in previous cases against newspaper groups. He was the first working member of the royal family to do so in 130 years when he gave evidence in previous cases. This is allegations put against Associated Newspaper Group Associated Newspapers Limited, dating from 1993 through to 2011. For their part, A&L deny all the allegations and accusations levelled against them.